Throws out quick. Oh, he's picked. This might be a pick six. Bowman Jr. trying to be run down. He's showing everybody his shoe bottoms. Does he have enough? Got there. Boomer Sooner. How do you like that?
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Final minute now of the first half as Penix heaves it down into the end zone. Caught, touchdown, Odunze for a second time tonight.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
2nd and 6, 4.5 to go. And a wide open receiver, it's Kevin Coleman trying to make a move on catches, and he did. Touchdown, Louisville.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Ewers to throw over the top. Right there, Whittington, touchdown.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Quick to McMillan. Gonna throw it. Back to the quarterback. How about that? McMillan throws it to Michael Wiley for the touchdown.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Delayed handoff to Shipley. Breaks a tackle. Shipley to the 10. Hunting the pylon. Touchdown.
Now here's David Smoak and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go as we lead you into the Thanksgiving holiday weekend. Some great football coming up this weekend, both, of course, in college, NFL, and in Texas. The high school football playoffs, the regional semifinals. Craig Smoak, I'm David Smoak. We bring you today's show on this Wednesday. Garrett Ross running the mothership. Emery Levi Jack, of course, always doing something for this show, and also 365 Sports. We will hear from two sideline analysts for the game Saturday night at McLean Stadium. Baylor's last game. West Virginia's going bowling. Jed Drenning will join us. Ricky Thompson. Also, Dan Hope, who covers Ohio State on that huge game Saturday morning. Ohio State, Michigan, and Ann Arbor. He's from 11 Warriors. And also, my conversation with Baylor women's basketball coach Nikki Collin and Oklahoma State analyst, former Oklahoma State player Sam Mays will join us here in about 30 minutes. Craig Smoak, David Smoak, and here we go. Craig, the college football playoff rankings released last night. There is one change. Florida State drops to 5. Washington is at number 4. They had yet another nice win. Michael Penix and the Huskies are unbeaten. And you wonder, is that Washington's resume, which is really good and better than maybe anybody on that list, or is that the possibility Jordan Travis is injured?
I think it's very clearly it's Washington's strength of schedule. I think that's pretty clear what the reasoning was. You can't really penalize Florida State just yet based on just the Jordan Travis injury. I think to do that would be a real sham of the whole process. Granted, if they get into a situation where there's a gridlock and you're trying to whittle it down to who is the best team, then sure, it would ultimately come down to that. But there's still a couple of games to play, so I don't think you start to ping Florida State for that just yet. I'm sure for some voters there may have been that element, but I think really what you're looking at is the fact that Washington just went and beat Oregon State. I mean, that's a win on the road. You're unbeaten. You're healthy. So, yeah, I think that's just very clearly the fact that Washington has the better resume. Now, you may wonder, if we're talking resumes, then why are they just at 4? Why aren't they even higher? But, there is the other part of the eye test and whatever else people want to throw into the mix of why they vote for things. But, yeah, I mean, pretty much as is the top 4 except for that major change, and I think that's directly a result of what you've actually gone out in the field and proven when it comes to the Huskies. Was Washington State this weekend, the Apple Cup, of course, earlier this week they announced they would resume or they would extend the series, the rivalry, despite the Pac-12 being blown up and Washington State being left along Oregon State on an island at this particular time. Georgia won. Ohio State 2, Michigan number 3,
Those 2 and 3 will play Saturday morning, 11 o'clock. And again, Dan Hope will join us a little bit later on in this show to discuss the Buckeyes. Washington at 4. Now, let's look at the alphas. Florida State, 5, unbeaten. Oregon at number 6, the only losses against Washington, and a chance, if they can beat Oregon State, that they'll play Washington again for the Pac-12 championship. Texas remains 7. They've been kind of like just simmering right there. Haven't been able to move up. They have Texas Tech Friday. Most likely they're going to play in the Big 12 championship game. Craig, among those in front of them, if everything was to at least remain status quo, which I know teams are going to play each other, who does Texas need to see lose for sure that's reasonable for them to get into the college football playoff?
Well, I think Oregon right there in front of you, Florida State right there in front of you, and then Ohio State, Michigan should take care of itself. Now, with the winner or the loser of that game, would it be a close enough game where if it's Michigan, let's say, well, I guess it doesn't really matter. If it's Michigan or Ohio State, do they fall all the way, 3 or 4 spots down, or do they only drop to, let's say if it was Ohio State 4 or 5 or Michigan to, 4, 5, or 6? I don't know. A lot of it depends on the things that we don't know, which is how do you lose the game? I mean, it's one thing to lose, but if you're Michigan, Ohio State, and it's triple overtime and you lose by 1 and you're Ohio State and you're on the road, how much are you going to get pinged for that versus you get blown out by 25? So it's hard to say exactly, but I think Texas is sitting in a really good spot. Obviously, 4 of the teams in front of them have to play each other, so they have a great opportunity, especially, with Oregon right there in front of them, to leap on over with a win. And, same would go. I think they'd leap over Washington as well. But, I think Ohio State, Michigan, that'll boil down to the stylistically how that happens. But if you're Texas, I think outside of, being 5 or 6, I mean, you're in a really good spot. And even not being 5 or 6, I don't think really matters right this very moment with still, again, 2 weeks to play. Running out of time to make too many moves. But knowing that there's going to be at least 2 teams in front of you losing, and one of them or another one also has a quarterback injury at this point, I think you feel great. The only one that maybe you feel is not going to be shaken too much is Georgia probably, but they still got to play Alabama. So I mean, there's a lot of chaos that can still happen. Shoot, Texas could still lose. But yeah, I think they feel great about where they are right now for sure.
Gary, let me ask you this: when you look at names, and let's not be naive here. Texas has the logo. Obviously, Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia, Alabama. If Alabama was to run the table, which means they beat Auburn and then, of course, would upset Georgia, do you think that Alabama, despite the loss to Texas, if they finish that way and the game with Georgia is 23-20, do you think that could block Texas out and Alabama in that scenario ends up, even despite the head-to-head loss in September, jumping UT?
I think there's going to be a lot of people, especially in SEC homer type per se, that would be rooting for that, but I still think I'm of the camp where head-to-head matters. And Texas went on the road into Bryant-Denny and took care of Alabama. I don't see a situation where they could jump them like that. My more so concern is how does it play out to where conference champions get left out? Like if Michigan, Ohio State play, that's going to eliminate one of them. So then you have Florida State right there who's undefeated, and they would be the ACC champion if everything plays out. Like, you're going to have a log jam of a situation where you have like 3 or 4 conference champions in a situation where Texas is going to have to jump onto them to get in. I don't know how that's going to shake out.
But they would be a conference champion, too. Oh, you're talking about if Georgia runs the table.
Yeah, if Georgia runs the table, then you have Michigan.
Ohio State, no matter what, whoever wins the Big 12, Big 10 title.
And then you have an opportunity where you have the winner of the Pac-12, the way it sits right now, regardless, is ahead of Texas, right? Like, say, if it's Washington or Oregon, whoever wins that, they're still ahead. And then Florida State's ahead, whereas they would win the ACC. Like, how does that shake out?
That could happen.
I think, but as far as like the Bama scenario, there's no way, in my opinion, Bama should jump Texas due to the head-to-head in Bryant-Denny.
But the first year that they ever did this, Craig, was a head-to-head that did not come into play between TCU Baylor in 2014. But that, again, was 9 years ago, and a lot has changed. Plus, you have the UT involved in that. They've got to take care of their business. Tech Friday night in Austin, and then, of course, whoever they play, most likely at AT&T Stadium in Arlington.
Yeah, and I don't think the head-to-head really played in with TCU and Baylor as far as, like, them getting jumped by Ohio State. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't – you're saying could Texas pass or could Alabama pass Texas? But the thing with TCU and Baylor wasn't them hopping each other. It was them getting hopped by Ohio State or not being able to jump over Ohio State.
Because they did not have a championship game data point.
Right.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah. So, I mean, there wasn't I can't believe TCU finished – well, TCU didn't finish in front of Baylor. TCU finished behind Baylor. Baylor won the head-to-head. So I think that it's kind of similar but not really the same thing because of the fact that that they were more worried about others as opposed to this scenario where Bama's just jumping Texas just because they look better. That really wasn't the deal then. But I think the conversation of that even happening is ridiculous. I think that's just a silly conversation that, Feinbaum must be having on his show or something because I could only see Alabama fans really making a strong case for why that would make any sense whatsoever. Because other than just roll tide, it would make no sense with Texas having the only loss to Oklahoma in a close game at that where they lost the lead late with time running out, and they very clearly beat Bama. I mean, very clearly went into their place and beat them and beat Jalen Milroe. And what are we going to start? Oh, well, he was only in week 2 form. He's in week 12 form. I mean, how much do we want to tweak things? So yeah, I mean, it's one thing to sit there and view, I guess, Florida State in a little bit of a different way. I guess I don't even agree with that, but I can see where at least you're looking at it that way. But I don't see how you're looking at this and going, well, Bama with the eye test. I mean, I don't know what you're going for because Texas has had a pretty good eye test along the way as well. So yeah, I don't think that should happen at all.
I bet that's closer than we think, but it shouldn't happen. If in fact, even now, if Alabama beats Auburn and then beats Georgia, they absolutely will make that a difficult decision, whether it's not Texas that they jump or somebody in front of them, depending on if Oregon, Washington end up flipping wins. If Oregon wins the Pac-12 title with a win against Washington, that will be interesting to see what happens with that.
I mean, it feels like we're at the end of the road, but I mean, there's also, as you mentioned, a lot of really big games left. So
big games.
We don't have to figure it out right now. They're setting the chessboard to make whatever maneuvers need to be made the next couple of weeks, but obviously this weekend will be very telling, and then championship weekend will be absolutely massive. So this whole, can Alabama do that? Well, shoot, okay, let's go see them beat Auburn, which is probably going to happen, but then let's go see them beat Georgia, and then let's have that conversation because otherwise it's still pretty unrealistic. And I think, again, if you're Texas and you've got Texas Tech, who, is playing really hard and tough, but Texas stops the run well, and, it's going to be interesting with them at home to see what Tech can do to make that competitive. And then the following week, probably against Oklahoma State, I think you definitely take their path versus take the path of and Alabama having to play a Georgia, probably even a Florida State, having to play, it's a middling Florida team, but then a really pretty good Louisville team.
Yep.
And
Top 10.
Yeah, and then, obviously the Pac-12 is what that is. So, again, I'll go back to, I think Texas is sitting pretty. I don't think they get jumped by Alabama, but, if Bama goes and wins these next 2, then that'll be a more realistic conversation to have. But right now, I think that's I think that what we have happen is the fear-mongering of well, what if, and, if we're
that's
talking.
What we do, though.
Let me finish my thought.
Okay.
It's one thing if it's one thing if it's a Tulane or something like that. I think we're talking about Texas, though. We're talking about the brand that is Texas. I don't think there's too many teams that are going to be hopping over UT.
That's how I started out, though, is that if it was somebody that wasn't a brand name, then you would probably look at scenarios, and I bet that would be really difficult for the committee to not, if it's a non-brand name, to give them the opportunity to play in the champ or semifinals. That's what's interesting about it. That's why I brought up 14, because TCU and Baylor had that game, but neither one of them, no matter how good they were, and they were both very good, they're the logos. And no matter what, and we'll see what happens. This year, among the top 5, 6, or 7, 8 teams, wouldn't you say, Garrett and Craig, that all of them are logos? If you look at them, every one of them, maybe not some as high as others, but all of them are brand names.
No, I think you could definitely make a case for that. I mean, Washington, to me, from my perspective, because I don't remember their heyday when they were winning championships, I would say that could be more of an argument from a modern standpoint, but they're definitely still a brand.
Yeah, I mean, it's all brands. I think that's something that the committee's got to be very excited about. It's a lot of SEC, a lot of Big Ten, but then the biggest brands out in the other leagues as well. And I know what point you're getting at, but that's the thing. That's like the double whammy of like, is this like Baylor TC? No, because for one, it's Texas. For two, they have the head-to-head, and I think the scenario is different. So yeah, that's what we do. We speculate on this, but again, it's one thing to get too far down the line, knowing that there's these let's see Ohio State, Michigan, and what that could look like. So I think to see some more evidence is what's going to be needed, obviously, here. And if we get into that scenario, that'll be a very interesting conversation to have if Alabama's able to pull off the sweep the rest of the way. But, yeah, it's going to be a very interesting final 2 weeks to see, who may stumble and who may not. But if you're Texas, I mean, you're as big of a brand as it gets. So just win your games and see what happens around you. But I wouldn't be worried too much about getting hopped. If I was TC or Baylor, I would. If I had a commissioner who wasn't willing to stick his neck out on the line and declare head-to-head something, I would. But that's not really what they're facing right now. Although the threat of Bama having beat Georgia is obviously something that anybody, I guess, in front of them, whether it's Texas or whether it's Oregon or whatever, I think probably have to be mindful of, because obviously a lot of people are talking about the Tide's resurgence here over the last few weeks.
One note: last night, the number one ranked team in men's basketball beaten. Kansas beaten by Marquette. Shaka Smart, very intense game. Great game early in the year. Kansas losing to Marquette by 14, 73-59. We invited Paul to come on and discuss that game, but I think he might have not had the guts to want to discuss an X's and O's of that. If he was on the set with us today, he's off today. In fact, I sent a note to Amanda and Paul. I said, hey, we have a segment open to discuss KU and Marquette. And Amanda's response to me was, the season is over.
Of course it is.
A little dramatic, but yeah.
The season is over. And Paul never responded, Garrett. Greg never said a word.
Oh, that's safe.
Smart.
Playing the safe route.
Very, very, very smart. Now, I don't know how if I'll be able to read this as well as I want, but here is just something to have fun with here in this opening segment today. This is a young man that has decided to turn or enter the NFL draft, all right? There's a lot of script right there. The bottom line is, if you read the script, he didn't play very much. He played during mainly blowouts, etc. He's entering the NFL draft saying that he's not going to get drafted, but having fun with that in this day and age of social media, of the offers people get, their finals 8 or 10 or 4 or whatever, entering the transfer portal. But how about this one? I love this from Barkley Briggs. He is entering and has now entered as eligible for the NFL draft. Love his sense of humor. Absolutely love his sense of humor. Why not have some fun with it? The best line was this: there are countless people who I have to thank for making my dream of playing Division I football a reality, but I especially want to express my gratitude to my family, my coaches, Oprah Winfrey, my teammates, Winston Churchill, my friends, all of those who have supported me throughout this journey. So if he ever, many of you may ask, if he barely saw playing time at a non-scholarship FCS program, why does this guy think he has any chance in the NFL? This is an entirely reasonable reaction, and I don't blame any of you for thinking this. I will provide roughly zero on-field value for an NFL franchise, but I'd probably be fun to be around. He, of course, is a player from Davidson, which is known as a basketball school.
Yeah, it seems he's got a great sense of humor. Not a fan of all of the statement tweets that we get, like all the announcements that we get in recruiting a lot of times. But here's a guy who's at the end of his college career and just having a little bit of fun with it, and you could tell that he probably is a pretty fun guy to be around. So, hadn't seen that, but cool, I guess, little post to make, and nice sense of humor, like you said. That seems to be getting a lot of play. So, yeah, good to have fun with things, and maybe he gets a comedy offer of some sort for SEC shorts or something like that, some college football-related comedy as a result of that. But, I can't – what's his name?
Barclay Briggs.
Barclay Briggs. Well, shout out to Barclay Briggs, and good luck with whatever the next step holds, even if it's your dream being lived there on an NFL sideline, not contributing much.
All right, go back to the standings, if you don't mind, Garrett. I have a point to make here, and you guys can agree with me or not. That's fine. Look who they always stick at the bottom. And again, these are non-Power 5 programs. Liberty, you have Tulane in that mix, and also God, I just went blank.
North Carolina State?
Yes, but let's go to the 23 and 25. Almost every week when you have these standings come out, they'll slip in James Madison, who lost, or they'll slip in Tulane, or they'll slip in Liberty. It's almost like, hey, we got to include a couple of these non-Power 5 schools. And good for them to be involved, though. It's great for them. It's good for recruiting. But it's nice to see those two included with Liberty and also Tulane. They have that game on Friday against Jeff Traylor and UT San Antonio, UTSA.
I mean, I agree. It's kind of lazy to just sit there and stick kind of the same schools there at the end. But, I mean, there's Clemson at 24. There's Tennessee at 21. So they're not, in a bad neighborhood altogether. But, I mean, honestly, though, like how much higher are you sticking Liberty based on their schedule? With Tulane, I think they've been at it for quite a while now. But, yeah, I mean, that's just kind of what happens. But it's not surprising when I don't think too many of the people that are mostly spending most of their Saturdays watching those teams at the top are, not many of them, in my opinion at least, are spending as much time on the Tulanes or the Liberties or what have you. So, yeah, I mean, you don't want to do the whole participation ribbon thing. You don't want to, you get your spot and you're happy with it because it does seem like teams like that do just hang around in the same bottom 5 or so spots, and it takes a miracle to get any higher. But, I mean, in the case of Liberty, they're in there now. And I don't think that, unbeaten or not, that they've played the type of schedule that would warrant them jumping up too much higher than they are. Maybe here at the end of the road after being completely unbeaten. But yeah.
Well, here's my point, though. Tennessee and Clemson, yes, they're in a Power 5. They've lost 4 times. They've lost 4 games. And if you're one of those non-Power 5s or Power 5 schools that aren't supposed to be a part of the country club, you can force your way in it. We've seen them do that before. TCU did last year. But they're 7-4. It's like, hey, we got to keep them in here. And I know that probably straight up they'd win those games, but do we know that for sure? And that's always kind of like, well, let's make sure we put Air Force in here. They get knocked. As soon as they lose, they're gone. And they know that. And I don't know what would happen if they ended up playing, but I bet a bunch of those teams in front of them would not want to play any of those teams in just a regular, non-conference game, a neutral site, or even on the road at one of those schools, but their stadiums aren't nearly as big.
Well, I mean, this is kind of the SEC pattern that we've always seen, is that you can lose 4 games, but then the excuse is, oh, well, you lost to ranked teams. And so, oh, you lost by 3 touchdowns. Yeah, but it was Georgia. I mean, so, yeah, Tennessee got blown out by Missouri, got blown out by Georgia, and now they're going to play Vanderbilt. So I don't know. I think in the case of Liberty, though, having followed the Caden Salter story of what he's done all year, there's every week I'm like, okay, man, would love to see him play somebody that, has a pulse. No disrespect to him. He's doing what he's doing against great competition. I can't speak so much as to Tulane. I think at this point they'd be beyond not getting the respect card. But, as far as Liberty goes, I think you would take Tennessee 4 loss over them 9-10 times out of 10. So I'm sure that comes into play, but I don't know. I like the thing with the playoff conversation. It's like, I just don't get worked up because I know this is a sport that we cover, but I just feel like these are that's something that's just, I'm kind of numb to that. It doesn't make it right, but I'm just not surprised or getting, too out of, not that you are either, but
I'm not worked up of it. I'm just saying it's just,
no, I know. I'm
so
not speaking to you. I'm saying that I'm not surprised by it. I mean, it's what it's always been. It's always been disrespectful towards teams like that. It's always been that way where the SEC team gets to have an extra loss, and it can be a blowout loss. And in the case of Tennessee, it can be back-to-back blowout losses. But, hey, the teams they lost to are ranked. And so it, takes away as opposed to basically every other team in the country and other conferences who, if they got beat by, let's see here, a score of 36-7. Oh, well, that was in Columbia, and they were top 15. Oh, okay. I'll get beat by 28 points. Oh, well, that was at home. Oh, shoot. That was against the number 1 team, though. Oh, okay. Well, then that explains it away. So, yeah, it's definitely some SEC bias come into play when you have the just the constant cycle of the same voices saying the same things and backing each other up, an echo chamber. Then it just drowns out what is pretty obvious is those things are kind of rigged in some ways. Of no wonder there's 8 teams for the umpteenth week in a row from the SEC. Yeah, because one falls out, you throw another one in there.
Yeah, there's a bubble.
Yeah, and so it's been that way for years. It's not going to change given the way that the current setup is. It's probably worse now than ever, as a matter of fact. But I'm just not surprised to see that. Not that I agree with it.
When we come back, Sam Mays played at Oklahoma State, covers Oklahoma State, does his own talk show. He'll join us on Oklahoma State. They need to win. No matter what UT does, no matter what anyone else does, Oklahoma State can take care of their own business. Yes, there are some scenarios that could get crazy, as we've discussed, 120 plus of them as we enter the weekend of college football. Craig Smoak, I'm David Smoak. Garrett Ross here in the studio today, and this is 365 Sports.
Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is a premier, elite, life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers over 40 group exercise classes each week, including boot camp, bar, silver sneakers, and more. New bikes arrived and are waiting for you to test yourself, compete against yourself with a screen monitoring your speed, miles, resistance, and power, and with indoor cycling classes every day. New free weights, weight machines, TRX, rowing machines, stationary bikes, new treadmills, new elliptical machines on the spacious weight room floor. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, Alex Botch, and Nathan Roach, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow. A kids club included with your membership, plus sauna, whirlpool, and a tanning bed. 16 tennis courts, beautiful stadium court, and longtime youth tennis pro Britt Coleman, assistant junior pro Kennup, adult tennis lessons and clinics with Blake, and commitment to pickleball with 8 courts and instructor Jody Thurman. Visit the website, wacotennis.com, or visit us next to Hawaiian Falls on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
Some say a dog is a man's best friend, but I tell you what, boys, you better think again, 'cause there ain't nothing better than some cows, pigs, and turkeys too. I love to cover them in sauce down at Rudy's Barbecue.
Bring all your friends to Rudy's for some tasty oak smoke barbecue.
Next in line.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Don't miss out on the biggest deals of the year during the Black Friday sales event at Allen Samuels in Waco. Experience the adventure, style, and comfort of the new 2023 Jeep lineup. Shop our great selections in-store or online today and start your Jeep adventure. This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Sam Mays, selloutcrowd.com, former All-American at Oklahoma State. Cowboys, of course, with a chance to play in the Big 12 championship game despite some bumps in the road early, and then, of course, even a couple of weeks ago to UCF. Sam on the show, 365 Sports, David Smoak and Craig Smoak. Sam, thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving, by the way.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving to you guys. Thank you so much for having me today.
How are you doing? Because I know that we were going to have you on a couple of weeks ago. Hope you don't mind. Everything okay with you?
Yeah. You know, the thought of Bedlam almost killed me a few weeks ago. No, I had a hypertension crisis. My blood pressure skyrocketed to like 210 over 110 and basically stayed around that area for like 3 days.
Wow.
And I'm a big guy, and I lift a bunch of weights, and I put a lot of pressure on my heart, and it looks like I'm going to make some life changes, and but outside of that, I'm home and feel good, and I'm back to work in both my jobs, and so yeah, it was just one of those grab your shoulders and shake you, and realize that I'm no longer that 22-year-old invincible All-American offensive lineman. It's just a reality check, I guess.
Well, I'm glad you're okay and moving forward. All right, Oklahoma State has had an up and down, kind of a roller coaster. They got red hot, Ollie Gordon II and company. But your thoughts about, with all due respect to what's happened to them, that they have this right in front of them to play for a Big 12 championship. Is this one of Mike Gundy's best coaching jobs?
Man, it's such a strange season. So odd to see them start the way that they did and then obviously get on this hot streak. And it's just, I want to say yes to that, but I also have so many questions about what happened last spring. What was your evaluation this summer? Why did it take, 3 games within the regular season for you to figure these things out? It just seemed like, to be completely honest, Oklahoma State should have 2 more wins on their schedule. They should be probably ranked in the top 10 going into this year. So you got to give them credit for after that bye week figuring it out, right, and taking the field and really leading the charge to get to a strong year. But there's a lot of questions as far as the evaluation process for Oklahoma State, spring and fall camp and getting into the season. Where do they miss, right? Where do they screw up? And that's got to go on the coaches. So I'm conflicted. Incredible middle of the year, but the start of the year was uncalled for and seemed to be a little bit ridiculous to have the worst loss in 20 years on your home field against South Alabama. A South Alabama that came in with competence and didn't just win the game. They beat the hell out of Oklahoma State in that game. So, just a weird season. And even going into this weekend, guys, I have no clue what to expect or what team is going to show up. It's just so random, the success that Oklahoma State has had this year.
Obviously, they've had a lot of great running backs walk through those doors, Sam. But Ollie Gordon II, as Smokey mentioned, just your thoughts on the league's, the nation's leading rusher, tied for the lead in the entire country. Obviously, got derailed a couple weeks ago, but rebounded and got back on track last week. Is he too much of their offense in the long run when you start to think forward? And just in general, what have you made of what you've seen of him?
Ollie as the individual, right? The back, what a freak. Right? That kid is a freak of nature. And I've seen, you guys know, I was on the field in the Big 12 when it was the best conference in college football, period. And I've seen great backs at Texas, and I played against Adrian Peterson. And I've blacked for several great backs that are NFL players of my own. That kid reminds me so much of Peterson in the way that his upright running style. And then the fact that you get to the fourth quarter and he's the only one that seems like he's just getting warmed up, right? It's like he surges through the fourth quarter. Even like this weekend, watch the way that kid in the fourth quarter gets up and almost sprints back to the huddle. It's like, how are you not tired, right? And you got to give it up to Rob Glass and Oklahoma Strength and Conditioning team. They're literally one of the top 5 programs in the country. And Ollie Gordon looks like quite the recipient of just excellent strength and conditioning over the last couple of years. That kid's body is unbelievable, but he just gets stronger as the game goes along. And I think when you look at Oklahoma State's and how they simplified that run game earlier in the year. They got rid of a bunch of that RPO stuff, which I'm an old 60-40 run guard out of Youngstown, Ohio. I'm basically a goat. That's what you pick up a guy like me for. Let me play football in the phone booth. I don't want to hear any garbage about trying to run pass option and negating my just natural aggression off the line of scrimmage. I think it's one of the worst things for offensive linemen in the game right now is that run RPO, because it just doesn't allow you to unleash, because you've got to be careful not to get too far down the field. And so I think they got rid of that, and now they're just this straight up traditional, just zone up front run game has really helped that offensive line just kind of unleash themselves. And when you got a back like Ollie Gordon, who's not that first contact, the best back I played with was Tatum Bell. We called him T-Speed. God bless him. That kid could run. He outrun everybody on the field, but he wasn't great in that first 3 yards in the line of scrimmage. He could get knocked over, right, because he was just a smaller guy. Ollie Gordon, you don't have to block perfectly for him. You've got to get a shoulder on somebody, a hand on somebody, and he's going to do that work for you in that first 3 or 4 yards as you get through that line of scrimmage. So he's the perfect back for an offensive line that's not necessarily great. He's making that group look great. He's helped them improve tremendously with their confidence, but he's the majority of the reason why they're successful. And as far as is he too much of the offense, as I think that every time Allen or Bowman throws the ball, I'm just like, there's a fingers crossed, like, please don't throw it to the other team. But here lately, the kid's out there playing his game, and he's got a lot of moxie and swagger to him. He's going to go throw it down the field and try to make some plays. And if they can stretch the field out and keep getting it to those key players, Brendan Presley and some of those guys, they're going to have some success. They want to run first, but I think Bowman, especially in that Bedlam game, I thought the game plan was perfect. He's going to throw out there. I think he threw it in the first, 10 out of the first 15 plays. And OU's looking around like, I thought they were going to try to run the ball, and so when Bowman had success, the run game opens up easier, and, they just ground and pound for 4 quarters.
Sam, also, I forgot who it was, but somebody who we had on earlier this week mentioned that Ollie Gordon, when he takes the handoff, by the time he gets to the offense and defensive line, he's at full speed, along with the fact that he's a physical freak. How much, as an offensive lineman, does that make it even easier or want to block for him?
Yeah, no, it definitely makes it easier because his ability, it's like an explosion when he hits the line of scrimmage. And it's very, very odd that he can do it because he's doing it in basically 2 steps. He's not a short, choppy runner. You've seen guys in the past that, take short, choppy steps in that first 3 or 4 yards of their run. This kid is striding in the backfield. And so, but the ability to essentially dead leg in the backfield, make a cut, pause for a second. He reminds me so much of Le'Veon Bell. Also, right, like the patience that he has, even though he's at full speed, there's a moment where he allows things to develop in front of him and then hits the hole correctly, right, at the right time. It's been magnificent to watch. He's a special player. That kid can stay healthy. He's got, high draft pick written all over him. He's the perfect sized NFL back, catches the ball well out of the backfield. He's legitimately an everything talent.
You mentioned Bedlam at the start, and what a win that was for Oklahoma State. I know Mike Gundy kind of downplayed it during the week, and it's not the way that it used to be. And then right afterwards, he's talking about what a huge win it was. But what did you kind of think of just, I guess, the idea of the rivalry? Obviously there's some bad feelings of how it's going to change for at least the foreseeable future, but is it the same as it was even going into that game and coming out of that game? Just what were your thoughts on what was a massive win for the Cowboys over the Sooners?
Yeah, I can't imagine that it's not the same as it has been for 100 years. I get what Mike was saying in regards to, the access that these kids have to each other. It's got to be strange. You're going to camps around the country and you see each other, and now with social media, the world's about the size of a thimble, So yeah, they have a better understanding of who each other are, and I'm sure they do. There was a conversation about, I forget who it was, some quarterback at Oklahoma State was taking a vacation with a quarterback at OU, and I thought that was just appalling because I'm pretty sure if I would have stepped foot on OU's campus in 2000, I would have had my butt beat, and the same thing vice versa. We would have absolutely been fighting in the streets, and those two teams would have ventured down to the opposing campuses. So I think that is weird. But come game day, just the narrative in Oklahoma year in, year out is OU is, little brother this and Oklahoma State's this, and look at the record this. And I was so upset. It was my dad when I was a sophomore I don't know if you guys remember that Tommy Harris Sports Illustrated cover with the rain coming down him. So my dad sends like 12 copies to the equipment staff at Oklahoma State. for them to wallpaper my locker with it. This is in like September. So I just stared at Tommy Harris for like 7 weeks leading up to Bedlam. And by the time the game got there, I was feral, literally feral. Like I didn't sleep Thursday, didn't sleep Friday. They thought they were going to have to like drug me to go to bed before the game. Like I was just sick about playing. I wanted so bad to get on that field. And I just can't imagine not feeling that way to play those guys because it is constantly, you're just being bullied about it. And as you get into the professional space, you know, as a former Cowboy, I'm at the freaking water cooler in my station, and I got Jenny from accounting talking about how she can't wait till Bedlam to put little brother in their place. And I'm like, okay, Jenny, you can go back to your cubicle now. You know what I mean? Like it's just a different vibe. So yeah, man, I think the hate is still there, and I think when you saw him take the field, you know, that everybody levels up a little bit, and I think it's a shame that the game is not going to be played. Like it just seems like you've got grown men and women that are in charge of these decisions that are just not making the best decision for their teams, for their state, for their universities. If you're Mike Gundy, of course you want to play Bedlam. You want an SEC opponent every single fall. You want that in your non-conference because all it's going to do is get you more national television exposure. And for a guy that recruits consistently in the 40s or 50s, you think that he would do his very best for his team to get that exposure. You want to play Oklahoma. And if you're Oklahoma, you want a Power 5, or now at least, you want that kind of opponent in your non-conference also. Like, what are you scared of? You did nothing but beat the hell out of them for 100 years, right? Play that game. It's the best thing you could do for the state. And it's a shame that they just can't come to an agreement to make that happen.
Well, Washington and Washington State, of course, have had not a messy divorce, but very similar to that with what's happened. And they found a way pretty quickly. Didn't look like it, but they found a way. Sam, with what the Big 12 is now, Oklahoma and Texas might play for the championship. They played the game back at the Cotton Bowl. They'll keep playing that for another 100 years. They're about to leave. We know that. But the Big 12 moving forward, the decision by Bob Bowlesby to add 4, then Brett Yormark and company to add 4 more. What are your thoughts about the conference starting next year?
I mean, it's not what it used to be. You know, 20 years ago, I had the pleasure of playing in College Station, and I played Lincoln, and, you know, Missouri was with Brad Smith was great. Colorado had, you know, a couple of NFL backs every single year. And, you know, the conference was strong and physical and tough and nasty and had intimidating home field advantages across the board. And, you know, it's come a long ways from there, but I will look around the country and say that at least it feels more stable than it has in the last, you know, 2009 happens. And I'm looking around going, man, I'm not going to be able to tell my grandkids, you know, what the Big 12 is, or even my son who's 7. Like, am I going to be able to tell him, you know, what the Big 12 is and him know what it is and be able to watch Big 12 football? So as a former Big 12 member, I'm pretty happy that the conference looks about as stable as it can be in its turbulent times in college football. Like, it's going to be able to survive at least. But it's, you know, it's definitely not what it used to be. I'm sad to see OU and Texas go. I'll never forget watching Texas take the field for the first time as a true freshman on the sidelines. And, you know it, you know, because I grew up, I'm an Ohio kid. So like college football is it's like a religion to us. So I remember watching Texas in the 90s with my dad, and, you know, that American flag coming out of the tunnel. And then it was, you know, Casey Studdard was there and Cedric Benson was there, and they were just bigger than life. And then here come the Sooners in my first Bedlam game as a redshirt at home. And, you know, they had, you know, it was just this huge offensive line, and they were going to play for a national championship. And it was the first time that Oklahoma State Stadium was filled that year because they were terrible my very first year. I think they won 3 games or 4 games, and it was just awful. Tech beat them like 50-0 that year. I mean, it was a miserable season. But come Bedlam, the place was just like a hornet's nest. And I was just loved it as a college football fan as a kid, growing up watching Ohio State and Michigan, growing up watching Texas and Oklahoma and Nebraska, and just the history of the conference. Like, I just loved it. And so it just feels less, I don't know, like, you know, you just don't get that nostalgic feeling about the Big 12 anymore. But, you know, here we are. The brand is still there. We're going to get the WWE brand of the Big 12 championship, and we're just going to try to survive, I guess.
Yeah. Now, you said you're from Ohio and you played at Oklahoma State. How did they find you? I know you were highly rated in high school or whatever. How did Oklahoma State? Can you tell us that recruiting story?
Yeah, so I'll start in Columbus. So it was myself and Anthony Munoz's son were one of the highest 2-rated offensive tackles in the state. We go to the Ohio State football camp together, and every year Ohio State's got like an offensive defensive line challenge within their camp where the best in the country show up. From California to Maine, you're getting the best offensive linemen and defensive linemen in the country show up. So we end up finishing first and second in this competition. I think I was 330 pounds at the time. I ran like a 5 flat or 5, I think a 5 flat 40, maybe a little above 5 flat. And Munoz was like a 4'9" guy. And so we're looking at each other as coach. Oh God, what was his name? Who was the coach at Fort Tressel? I can't remember the guy's name. He was a real jerk. No one liked him. Cooper.
Yeah, John Cooper.
So Cooper. Yes. So he calls us into the office. And so my dad's there, Munoz's dad's there, and we're like, this is it. Because I had no plan of it. I knew I was going to go to Ohio State, right? And he looked at both of us and said, we've got grant money for you too.
Whoa.
And we looked at each other like, wait, what? And it was this devastating moment for both of us as we were like, wait, I don't know what you're saying. There's no scholarships for us. And he was like, we don't have them. We don't have enough scholarships for you guys. And he got fired the year after because some Ohio kid would show up for another team and just beat their butts.
Yep.
It seemed like every year he was losing somebody and they would just show up and play well. And so Munoz ends up at Tennessee, where his sister was playing for Pat Summitt. Well, I go back to the drawing board and, Georgia Tech, they were running that triple option. And like I said, I was a big goon out of Youngstown, and I just wanted to run the football. And so I considered them pretty good. Miami came in late. Michigan State came in late. And then Oklahoma State came in very, very last. And I just knew about the conference, right? I didn't know anything about Oklahoma State, but I sure as hell knew about Nebraska. Being from Youngstown, when Nebraska showed up to recruit, we put suits on. Just like Notre, it was either Ohio State, Nebraska, and Notre Dame got the most attention from Youngstown schools. And I played in the Steel Valley, right? That's where Stoops and Mangino and all those guys. So we cared about that a lot. So I knew Nebraska, I knew Texas, knew A&M, knew Oklahoma, and I was like, well, I'll go out to Stillwater and check it out. And the thing about Stillwater was probably the reason I went, because I knew that I would focus on school and focus on football because there was just nothing there. Right? The stadium was trash. The school was not extremely impressive. The weight room was not impressive, but the conference, the call of the conference, to be able to play against, the league's best brands was too much for me. I wanted to play in College Station so bad. So I ended up just, committing on my recruiting trip, and everybody was shocked that that's where I chose. My mom was like, are you kidding me? You're going out to Oakland. Did you see teepees when you were out there? I'm like, are you kidding? They ride horses at school? I'm like, Mom, please stop. They have vehicles in Oklahoma. But yeah, just ended up, it was the best decision I ever made. I played as a redshirt freshman and had a great career and ended up being an All-American and, played against some of the best college football teams of all time in that era. The only team that we didn't beat in my time at Oklahoma State was Texas. And that's because Vince Young was, immortal at the time. So,
yeah.
But I just loved it. Yeah. So I ended up in Stillwater.
Yeah. And he had games against Oklahoma State that were historic. The comebacks. Oh my goodness.
Three times he had him on the ropes, and 3 times he came back and beat him.
Back to back. I remember that, and he just found a way. If you don't mind me, one question about when you played the game, and you were talking about how you want to pound somebody in the mouth, whether you're a defensive lineman putting pressure on the offensive, vice versa. What was it like as a lineman, knowing that you were eventually wearing out attrition, physicality, mentally, the soul of the opponent across the line from you?
Oh, there's nothing like it. That was the goal, right? And so I had Les Miles is an old offensive lineman, so which made it even better. He completely understood the value of sticking with the run game. And Oklahoma State at that time, we would backdoor a lot of teams, right? Be down for 3 quarters and come back in the 4th, and people are like, I can't believe they did it again. And we're sitting in the locker room like, no, we know that's what we're doing. We're going to beat you into submission. They're going to see me. I'm going to basically zone block you 65 times in this game. I'm going to put my 330-pound body on you 60 times. You're going to be begging to get off the field with me by the time the game is over. There's nothing like taking the heart of a man across from you in the line of scrimmage. There's nothing like seeing them put their hands on their hips and they're starting to pant and they're starting to look down and the defensive huddle is backing off the line of scrimmage. That's when you know you've got them. Right? When the defensive huddle all of a sudden goes from 3 yards to the football to now it's 5 yards to the football, and now it's 6 yards to the football. And they don't even know they're doing it. They don't even know that they're not lining up close to the line of scrimmage anymore. because we're just beating the hell out of them over and over and over again. St. Les had like 8 plays that we would run as far as run blocking were concerned. 8 of them. No, it was not fancy. It was not tough. It was not hard. It was basically line up and beat the ever-living hell out of the team across from you. And let's see how they react to it. And that's how we won a bunch of games. Oklahoma State had like 24 good players on those teams back at that time. We're out there beating Oklahoma and beating all these teams that we shouldn't have beaten, going down to College Station and winning games. Everybody's like, how are they doing it? It's because we were just tougher. Les recruited pirates. He wanted you to be – he didn't care how fast you were, how big you were. He wanted dudes that were in the fight in the field, period. That's it. That's how his pregame speeches were. I honestly wonder if Les cared if we won a game. He wanted to see someone toted off the field. He wanted to see the other team dragging to the bus after the game. And we loved him for it, right? I think we ran 1,300 or 1,400 live snaps a spring at Oklahoma State. And people wonder why he failed at LSU, and it's because he didn't have that type of kid, right? That type of kid falls in love with you in Stillwater, right? That type of kid believes in you in Stillwater when you want to push him that hard in the spring. You go tell some blue chips at Texas. Like, this is why Charlie Strong failed at Texas, because he was doing the same thing at Louisville. You go to Texas or you go to LSU and tell some blue chips, hey, we're going to run 1,300 live snaps in the spring. They're not doing it for you. They're not working that hard in camp. They're not working that hard in the spring. But you go tell a bunch of Oklahoma boys, right, or kids from the 9th Ward down there in Houston, hey, we're going to put this work in at the University of Houston. Dana Holgerson did, right? I mean, it was it Dana Holgerson? Yeah, in the late 2000s, I feel like, or 2009. Was he at Holgerson there in 2009?
No.
The first time he was there.
Oh, he might have been on the staff. Bryles was there at the end of 2007 and then left for Baylor in 2008. And I'm not sure. That's right. Kevin Sumlin, I think, replaced him at Houston when Bryles left.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they beat that number 2 Oklahoma State team in Stillwater. Like, that was a tough, gritty team also just practicing their asses off, right? Like, that's how you do it, and that's how Les was. And so I just loved them for it, man. There was nothing like just the grind of it all.
Sam, happy Thanksgiving. Glad you're feeling better, looking better, getting better. And great storytelling and great insight on Oklahoma State this year, but also the history and your career recruitment and much more. Have a great week. Have a great holiday weekend, and also let's enjoy some more games.
Yeah, you guys call me anytime. I love doing this show. You guys are great. Have a good one.
Thank you. Sam Mays, again, selloutcrowd.com, former Oklahoma State lineman. What a bunch of great stories from him. By the way, one college football note of interest, James Madison has now decided no longer to pursue legal action against the NCAA for bowl eligibility. They've been denied many times. We discussed that, of course, with Tarleton State's Dr. Hurley. And then also, Jacksonville State was a part of that too. They now will just wait to see how many teams get to 6 wins. If there aren't enough, they'll be first in line to get to a bowl game before even, I think, the teams that are 5 and 7 that would have that option.
Yeah, I mean, probably the smart move, also, especially after you just lost last weekend. So kind of dings your whole puffing at your chest. And I understand why they did it. I also understand the argument of the rules are the rules. But, why not at least throw your hat in the ring and try to see if maybe you can get a change made? And look, you know what? You know you're not going to if you don't make the effort. But if you try and all of a sudden they're saying, you know what, we will tweak it, then you get a huge opportunity ahead of schedule. So it was worth the fight. But then if you turn right around after all that PR work and you get beat, then it kind of deflates you a little bit. So, yeah, I think it's probably best for them to just, move that to the side for right now and let the chips fall where they may. But obviously, like I just said, I understood where they were coming from, but a little bit, of road still left to hoe, and they weren't able to get the job done last weekend. So, yeah, that pinged that story a little bit.
I saw Brett McMurphy. I believe it was Brett McMurphy that listed yet another team this week got the 6 wins, and that's one more bowl slot, no matter if it's one of the higher-ranked bowls of the college playoff or even the other bowls that are played. But there are still like about 20-something openings, and, of course, we could see all of them filled maybe even as early as this weekend, or because it won't be the next weekend, because there won't be teams playing for the conference championship that don't have at least 6 wins. Most of them are going to have 9, 10, 11 wins. When we come back, Jed Drenning covers West Virginia, sideline analyst for West Virginia Radio. We've had Jed on many times, breaking down what has been a year I've had others from West Virginia reach out to me and say, hey, do you feel like Neil Brown's done enough to move on? I think West Virginia's been one of the great stories in the Big 12. There are others, but they're one of them. There's like 4 or 5 angles of pretty nice stories because he was on the hot seat big time at the end of last year and even, in fact, earlier this year. So Jed Drenning will join us at in a little bit after the 4 o'clock hour. This is 365 Sports. So on December 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, our great friends, the Duvall family at TexasBeefHouse.com, will have a Merry Beef auction online. You can go to TexasBeefHouse.com and look for it. There's a beef auction link at the very kind of a top just inside the left side, offering the 12 lots for the 12 days of Christmas, all packed with variety of steaks, tri-tip, short ribs, brisket. There's an online catalog. Of course, it will be on the website very soon. Shipping at bidder's expense. Follow the link that they'll have, and you can bid. And it's a silent auction on both the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of December. What is TexasBeefHouse.com? East Texas beef. Aged Wagyu beef. Premium grade. Texas Beef House provides quality farm-raised Wagyu beef. The difference between their beef and store-bought beef is simple. Most beef purchased in the grocery stores or fine steakhouses have been raised in feedlots designed for mass production of beef. At Texas Beef House, on their ranch, their cattle raised in open pastures, unlimited supply of grass, an intense, rotational grazing program, including planting summer annuals, winter annuals, so their cattle can graze all throughout the year. The Duvall family has found something very special, and they do something very special at TexasBeefHouse.com.
The right call can make all the difference on and off the field. I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgin Ford. When it's time for a new car, truck, or SUV, Bird Colgin Ford is the right call. Come check out our award-winning lineup of best-selling models in their class, like the Mustang, Explorer, Expedition, F-150, and Super Duty. Make the right call for your next vehicle at Bird Colgin Ford. Bird Colgin Ford proudly supports Baylor Athletics. Sic 'em Bears.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, is your holiday item superstore. Half spiral hams, 8 to 10 pounds for $4.45 a pound. Pit hams, 12 pounds for $4.45 a pound. Bone-in hams, 18 to 22 pounds for $3.40 per pound. Whole raw turkeys from 12 to 16 pounds for $2.50 a pound. Whole smoked turkeys, that's smoked turkeys at 9 to 12 pounds for $3.75 a pound. And mini pit hams, 6 to 8 pounds for $5.99 a the pound. And don't forget, they have full-service butcher shop where you can find what you want: pork, poultry, seafood, and beef. And I bring up the beef because big beef tenderloin or a prime rib. Brian Bauer and the Bauer family. Full-service bakery with fresh-baked kolaches every morning and bread. And cold beer and wine. Tailgate needs from pellet fuel to charcoal. Waco Custom Marketplace and the holiday items, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Jed Drenning, sideline reporter, analyst for West Virginia Radio, does an incredible job covering West Virginia, but also the Big 12. And Jed joins Craig Smoak, David Smoak here on 365 Sports. Jed, happy Thanksgiving. I know you're traveling to come to Waco by the weekend, but we want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving. And Neil Brown, is there still any warmth at all in on his seat?
Well, I can imagine. But as I always preface that response with, that's way above my pay grade. But, Vegas pegged us at 4.5 wins over under. So we're sitting here parked at 7 with a game to go and a bowl game. So, I can't imagine. I've heard chatter that he's going to be in the conversation for Big 12 Coach of the Year just based on the level to which we have overachieved. That'd be my take on that.
Jed, what did you think of the rushing performance last week against Cincinnati? Just an incredible showing. Something I know that a lot of Baylor fans, given their rush defense, are pretty concerned about, even more so after last weekend. But your thoughts on that win and just sort of where they found themselves positioned here entering the final week?
Yeah, I don't think the O-line was happy with the way they performed, obviously, in Norman against the Sooners. And then that was compounded by the fact that a few days later, the finalist list for the Joe Moore Award, which goes to the outstanding offensive line in college football each year, the finalist list came out with the top or final 15, and West Virginia's offensive line wasn't among the top 15. And I think that they took that personally. I really do. I mean, that's one of those awards, guys, that you know all about it. It's cool because it's a group award. It's not an individual award. So those O-lines really take a lot of pride in being in the conversation to be part of that. And I think ours does as well. So if you're going to look at any metric measuring the success or productivity of an offensive line, I defy you to find one that suggests West Virginia shouldn't be among the 15 best in the country. I mean, when you look at what we've been able to do, we've been pretty consistent with it too. We're averaging 5.1 yards per carry. That's the most by a West Virginia offense in 2016. We're averaging 233 rush yards per game. That's the most by a West Virginia offense since Pat White was playing in 2007. And in league play, we're one of 2 Power 5 teams in the country that have allowed just 3 sacks. So how we are not one of the 15 best offensive lines in the country, I don't know. And I think the offensive line at West Virginia would agree with me. And they took that personally, and going against that Cincinnati front 7 that has a couple NFL guys in it, with Jawan Briggs and Dante Corleone. I think they came out, wanted to play some nasty football and see if they could push those guys around and make somewhat of a statement. And that's what you saw.
How much does what Garrett Green is, he's not the perfect guy when you look at what a quarterback is supposed to be, but I love his intensity, his physicality. He's not big, but he seemed like he runs big. How much does it help also having someone like him for them to block for as well?
Yeah, sometimes he runs too big, right, guys? I can't say it. At least a couple of times a week, I'm reminding him on the sidelines, protect yourself. You don't need to be a hero every snap, but he's a junkyard dog. He leads the way. And Neil has said many times, he gives us a chance each week out. We always feel like we have a chance with Garrett. He's electrifying. He's explosive. He plays on the edge, doesn't leave anything on the field. And really what he does with the skill set that he has, you don't have to make the perfect call. Sometimes you can get just as much production off script as you can on script in terms of him seeing something he doesn't like, tucking the football, finding a crease, finding a seam. So it puts you in much more manageable situations. And really, more so than anything, it forces the defense into an 11 on 11 equation versus an 11 on 10 proposition when we're running the football. So if you combine what we've got out of the productivity of the offensive line, the depth we've enjoyed at running back, and you plug Garrett's skill set into that, I think it's been a good fit. And a lot of people have tried to indict him because his completion percentage is hovering in the low 50s. Well, fair enough, but I would also point out that we have pushed the football vertically more than any point in several years. And a matter of fact, more than any team in the Big 12. I think we're averaging, when you look at Garrett's numbers, 24% or so of his throws have been 20-plus yards downfield. That's the highest number in the Big 12. So we're pushing the football vertical. Plus, he's doing his part in helping us avoid some of those sacks. So sometimes he hits the peanut vendor in the ear with it instead of putting himself in harm's way to survive and advance another down. So, I think there's some easy access throws that he needs to do a better job of completing to get that thing up in the mid-50s or even push 60%. But we're a vertical pass game team with a quarterback who can run, and that's by and large worked for us this year.
One thing that was noticeable last week with that big rushing output, that it was a lot of green, a lot of white. Donaldson contributed, but not in a major way compared to those two. I know he's a little banged up, Jed. So what is kind of the status as far as this week as opposed to last week when it appeared it was more of a game-time decision with C.J. Donaldson? Well,
that's just it. He was in the green jersey last week. It was a game-time decision. We wanted to be cautious with how we proceeded with C.J. He's further along this week than last week, but he's still not at full health. And I don't mean that in the sense that nobody's at full health, because here we are at this point in November. It's football after all, right? But that's something we still do need to keep an eye on. But I think he's further along than he was. But Jaheim has stepped up at the right point. And when you look at Justin Jackson, he's in the mix as well. And he's a steady hand that we've been able to lean on as a third option there too. So they've kind of shared that burden and shared that load, and it's worked out well for us.
Jed, when Neil Brown was at Big 12 Media Days, we had him on. He was pissed. You could tell it was an edge to him, as it was to the group that was there with West Virginia and Arlington. They were picked dead last in the league, and I'm one of the idiots that had them at the bottom. I really am. I admit that. But I was so impressed when he sat there and discussed, how can anybody with any kind of football brain think a team with our offensive line and who we have coming back can be that low? How much of that chip do they still have even now it's November?
It's not going away until the season ends. The number 14 is prominently displayed throughout the building. That has been the jet fuel throughout the course of this entire season, that level of disrespect. They're saying, all right, this is a football team with the most battle-tested offensive line in the league, with at least 2, if not 3 or more NFL guys on it. We think some of the best guys at their position, not just in the conference, but potentially in the country. And we brought all those guys back after finishing the season with wins against Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. 4 newcomers. What exactly was everybody looking at to think that we are 14th on that list with this offensive line? Does blocking no longer matter in the game of football? That's kind of what they were looking at. We're like, we kind of think blocking does matter, and everything else from a success standpoint can be downstream from that. And but in fairness to those who questioned us, Garrett wasn't inserted until late in the year. There were some question marks with all the new faces on the defensive side of the football. I think it was fair to question us. I just think that those in the building looked at it like, question us to the point that we're 14th? Really? Really?
Yeah.
I think that was the case.
One of the things I had, Craig, there are like 8 teams, and I just kind of probably could have just thrown up a bunch of pieces of paper, picked them up in order, and maybe that's how I did it, which is admitting that I didn't know what the hell I was talking about.
It's difficult to look at that. This league has such parity in it. It really does, now more so than ever. And it's difficult to distinguish number 4 from number 13. On a given Saturday, what did we learn from the Oklahoma State Cowboys trip to Orlando? Anything is possible. If you don't bring your best level of football and come to be competitive, you're going to get run out of the building. And that's always been the case in this league at large. I learned that. Our first Big 12 loss, guys, coming out of the Big East in 2012, we were unbeaten and nationally ranked, pushing the top 5. Fresh off a big win at DKR under the lights. We had to turn around the next week and go to Lubbock. Well, we didn't show up to play for that football game. And it was over at halftime. It was 35-7. Neil Brown, ironically enough, was the OC. for Tommy Tuberville's Texas Tech team. But that's what we learned. In the old days of the Big East, maybe if you were facing a struggling UConn team, you didn't play well for the first half, your punishment was you were down 14-10 at halftime and could recover. Well, this league will leave you behind if you don't show up to play. And that's pretty obvious. But it's a very narrow margin separating the best teams from what will be considered the bottom of the pack. So, yeah, I agree with that.
Jed, I think with the Big 12, especially the influx of new teams, and there's going to be more obviously coming next year, but everybody's still kind of learning the lay of the land, feeling out like what the rivalries might be, things of that nature. I don't want to make West Virginia, Cincinnati sound like it was Oklahoma and Texas or anything, but was there anything to, them meeting for the first time in a while, just for those of us who don't really know the personal side of that history back in the Big East and so forth? Was that a big deal, or did it not register maybe the way that I think it may have?
It was nice to get a familiar face back on the schedule from the days of yesteryear. But I think really it's going to matter to Mountaineer fans next year when we have a chance to travel to Cincinnati.
Gotcha.
That's where it's really going to matter. Even going to UCF, guys, that's not a traditional rival of ours. They weren't a member of the Big East. Just to stay in the East Coast for a road game was such a relief. It was such a relief just to have an hour and 45-minute flight, stay in your time zone, fly down, get home at a reasonable hour. It felt so fundamentally different than any of these Big 12 road games that we're used to. So I think that's where Cincinnati is going to come into play. I think West Virginia fans are excited about the opportunity to actually have a road game that we can drive to, because the biggest disconnect, I've always said that culturally we fit hand in glove in the Big 12. When you look at the other fan bases and the other schools and the other cultures around those programs, it's a perfect fit. But geographically, it's been a challenge because West Virginia is a team that traditionally has a fan base. Our fans would travel to all these Big East games. They jump in the car and drive 6, 8, 9, 10 hours. They do that with a smile on their face. But our closest road trip in the Big 12 was Ames, Iowa, almost 1,000 miles away. That made that difficult to the extreme. So getting a couple East Coast teams makes that a little different, a little more appealing, and I think that's the role that Cincinnati will play moving forward. But I can see a buzz around that football game, sure.
I don't think anyone appreciates it unless they deal with it. You can't appreciate that if you're Oklahoma State or teams in the Midwest or in the Central Time Zone or whatever. UCF's going to deal with it a little bit. It's good to have, like you said, Cincinnati in that neighborhood. And now you're going to go even further west because of the 4 incoming schools.
You don't need to remind me.
Hey, Jed, I saw
especially when he just sounded so relieved at the Orlando trip and the Cincinnati trip.
My God! We were. I did Neil's show last night because Tony Caridi's out of town, so Andrew Caridi sat in and did Neil's coach's show early because of the strange Thanksgiving week and all of it. And there were some fans in town from Tucson, and they wanted to meet Neil, so they approached the table during a commercial break and explained that they were from Tucson. And Neil said, yeah, we're out there next year. And again, just at that point, I was like, oh, I forgot.
Yeah.
Just for a second, I forgot about that. But the other part of that is it's had this effect as well. The olive branch that the administration has tried to extend to Mountaineer fans is, well, sure, you can't travel to these conference road games. But I'll tell you what we're going to do. Well, the rest of the conference is scheduling one P5 and then a couple teams they can beat. We're going to go to Penn State and Pitt. How about that?
Yeah.
So our non-conference schedule has been far less manageable than most because of that, just to give our fans some opportunity. We played under the lights at Lane Stadium in Blacksburg against Virginia Tech on a Thursday night. So, yeah, we've tried to give our fans an option from a non-con standpoint to at least have a game they can drive to. And what that's done, it's made our schedule much more difficult than it otherwise would be. And I don't blame the rest of the Big 12. Why wouldn't you schedule one P5 and a couple winnable games? That's an ideal schedule, and I think that's something you'll see West Virginia try and work with Ren Baker, try and work our way towards, but that's made it even more difficult. I've always said our 6-6 and everybody else is 7-5. But that's something else that comes from those challenging road games.
How much has Ren Baker brought stability? Football winning helps everywhere because Baylor obviously is going through what they're going through. But how much has Ren Baker stabilized what was and could have been kind of a turmoil type of transition?
I think he's the right personality, the right guy at the right time. And I think Shane Lyons did good work when he was here. But he's a different type of AD.
Mm-hmm.
Ren is a new age kind of AD, and in this age where we have to find revenue streams and to some extent push the envelope like everybody else is in the age of NIL, you have to create money where it otherwise doesn't exist. I mean, he's been very transparent in saying that, look, when you look at West Virginia traditionally, when we've had success as a member of a league, it's been when we were at least financially in the middle of the pack of that league, like in the old Big East days. When we were winning in the Big East, we were at least in the middle of the pack financially. Well, that's not the case right now with West Virginia. We're somewhere in the bottom third, so we have to find some way, instead of complaining about it, to create non-traditional revenue streams to propel ourselves or elevate ourselves up into the middle tier. But I will say this, while Shane Lyons was here before he was gone, the facility renovations are going to serve us well for a handful of years moving forward. This arms race, especially, guys, in the age of NIL, you don't really know what's going to happen in terms of, you can't burn the candle from both ends. It used to be that you spend all your money on improving your facilities to impress recruits. Well, now it's been said, the head coach at Maryland recently said, look, these kids will get dressed in a trash can if you give them $25,000 in their pocket, right, from an NIL standpoint. So we put all this money into facility renovations, and our facility is right up there among the best in the country. And I'm not so sure that you're going to see those types of things as mainstream as they were before in the age of NIL. So, as Ren tries to settle in and find these new ways to generate revenue, at least our facility is up to speed and did just recently undergo those renovations because we'll probably need it.
How good is Zach Frazier? And is he under the radar among those who are, like you mentioned, a part of these various lists? How just solid, dominant, and I guess you could say consistent is he?
He's very consistent. He's kind of been the cornerstone. When Neil took this job in 2019, we were historically bad running the football. I mean, we were having to dig back into the 1960s to find the last time we struggled to run the football the way we did in 2019. Zach was a true freshman and started as a true freshman in 2020, the COVID year. And around Zach, we built this offensive line that we now know and love. We've got a couple of Spring Valley tackles here in West Virginia, high school kids that we think they're NFL guys as well. One, Doug Nestor, just played his last game at Mountaineer Field. Wyatt Milam will be back next year. And then we filled in around Zach. But he has been the absolute building block cornerstone of this offensive line. I don't think there's a lot of holes in his game. And when you talk to some of these guys in the NFL, I mean, we're nearby some of these Steeler folks, and Steeler scouts will just absolutely tell you off the record, hey, I'd like to see him in black and gold. People get excited about what he brings to the table and the level of consistency. And I think you saw that. I think Zach was pretty amped up to go against Dante Corleone because Dante Corleone is, in my estimation, one of the better interior defensive linemen in this league. And he's a guy who will play on Sundays as well. And Zach really showed out and played a heck of a football game against him. But I think he's going to bring a lot of value to somebody. He's an old wrestler, so leverages his game, and that served him so incredibly well. But I could see him playing in the league for 10, 12 more years, guys. He's one of those types of kids. Plus, he's just a well-rounded, great individual. I mean, he really is. He speaks sign language. He learned it because he's a family member that can only speak through sign language. So he's a special kid. He's a special leader. He's a great presence in anybody's locker room. So I'm excited to see what he's going to do at the Senior Bowl and beyond. And I think he has a tremendously bright future.
Jed, one more thing. Thanksgiving tomorrow. What if you had to put together the perfect plate for a Thanksgiving meal, knowing there's like 12 different things you can just like slam your face into a plate? What would it be?
Well, Smokey, you call it stuffing or do you call it dressing? First,
I call it dressing. But okay. If it comes out of the turkey that you cook inside the turkey while it's cooking, to me it's stuffing.
Technically, it's stuffing. I'm just an old school turkey stuffing / dressing, mashed potatoes and gravy. Now I do our green beans and bacon in the crock pot.
Yep.
But this we're gonna venture out a little bit this year. My older son, who's in college, helps me do a lot of the cooking. My wife takes care of the bacon. I hate to bake. I love to cook. And we're gonna I've been hearing about the deep fried turkey for so long. I wasn't ready to take the dive on the turkey, so we got a game bird. So we're going to do the turkey in the oven as we always do, and we're going to deep fry if weather cooperates. It might be snowing here tomorrow, actually. But we're going to get in the driveway. I'm not stupid enough to do it in my house. So we're going to deep fry this game bird in the driveway, and I'm eager to see how that goes. So that's how we're mixing it up this year.
And make sure that turkey, like you have a lot of space around you. because and it's not frozen. Because you will have a volcano of lava and oil everywhere.
Yeah.
Enjoy it, Jed. Be careful on the trip here to Waco. We'll see you on Saturday. Thanks for your time.
We appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much.
Jed Drenning, West Virginia football sideline analyst with us on 365 Sports. Which, Craig, among the teams that were not supposed to be good, who's the best story? West Virginia is one of them. Kansas, I think everyone thought was on its way up. They've had their ups and downs. Who's the best story? We don't have a TCU or maybe even a Baylor from 2 years ago. Who would that be?
I think it'd probably be West Virginia. I think Texas is a pretty good story,
Sure.
but they're not allowed to really be in that conversation, are they? Because they're Texas, and so that's just expected. But I think if you just treat them like everybody else, it's a great story that they're 11-1 potentially at the end of this road, very likely here at the end of the week, by beating Texas Tech. Now, maybe Joey and company have an ace up their sleeve and they're able to pull the upset and really create a lot of chaos. But I think Texas and just Sark and the potential of having only the one loss and being in the playoff and all of that in the final year of the Big 12 with all the talent that they have, like they're a good story. It's just a different type of story. I think Iowa State, given what their season started off like, the fact that they were over halfway through conference play and still in the Big 12 title race, no longer the case here with just 1 week to go. But, I mean, they were in the mix for quite a while and, had an opportunity to create some noise and some chaos along the way as well. Like, couldn't finish the job against Texas. Could have had an even better year, but given what the expectations were after losing, multiple players, including your starting quarterback, your starting running back, to, now have it to where Rocco Beck's like one of the great freshmen in the country right now in terms of what he's been able to do, but also now how optimistic you are about his future because of what you've seen and just the way they've kind of rallied together to be, a highly competitive team and to make some noise. I think they're great in their own way. And, Oklahoma State, I would have thrown them in there if not for just a couple of really ugly blemishes. But if they can find their way into winning the Big 12 title, and redeem themselves from the Baylor game a few years ago, especially so unexpectedly, that would be a great story. But, yeah, I'd say, Texas in their own, unique way, Iowa State and probably West Virginia would be the most interesting because everybody else has taken a few lumps or it's been a little bit of a disappointment. So, yeah, I think that those are the ones that I would go with off the top of my head here.
Yeah, I think West Virginia, because of who everyone thought they were, including the idiot of me, when it came to putting together that Big 12 preseason poll. Texas, remember, was overwhelmingly the pick to win the Big 12, and it did have some grit to it rather than maybe the last 8 or 10 years when they were up there because of their name and the expectations. One note, Neil Brown in pretty good spot. 3 of the 5 offensive linemen starters return. Donaldson and White with Garrett Green in front of them, back as well. It appears that way. Every single receiver is back. And so only 12 players walked on senior day at West Virginia, their last home game. So it will be interesting to see what they do and reload. And again, it doesn't guarantee anything, but there we are with that. When we come back, it is called The Game. It is an unbelievable scene. Ohio State, Michigan. I'm old enough to absolutely remember getting up on Saturdays and watching early in the morning the Ohio State-Michigan game with Bo Schembechler and Woody Hayes along the last 50 years or so. And they play 11 o'clock. Big Ten Division Championship on the line. Big Ten Championship appearance on the line. National Championship on the line as far as the college football playoff. Dan Hope covers Ohio State for 11 Warriors. This is 365 Sports. IdealMRI.com. Dr. Rob Maxey and partners there have done an incredible job. Ideal MRI in the Central Texas marketplace, right off of I-35 in Waco. And here's the thing that makes them so special. They're gonna get what you need done. One, a muscle, a ligament, something that's bothering you. I've had this annoying hip issue. Is it bone on bone? No. Is it a muscle? No. Is it a ligament? No. I know that because Ideal MRI has helped me find that by finding that it's not that. And so it's a nerve issue that kind of also traces back to my lower back, that when it wants to flare up, it wants to flare up. But I found out that it's not something that I have to do surgically. Ideal MRI will do that for you, whether it's your lower back, whether it's your hip, whether it's your knee, whether it's your shoulder, wherever it is that hurts, that you have to take. You don't want to, but you have to take something to get rid of the pain. You can't sleep well. You're tossing and turning. There are times even during the day where it's just like you just shut it down. Ideal MRI is going to find out what your doctor needs to know, what you need to know, and the images that will put up on the portal so they can find out and give that information back to your doctor and you very, very quickly. And the best part, that's a great part, $497 or less every single time. Never more than that. Sometimes less than that, and the average is $1,100. It is idealmri.com in the Central Texas Marketplace off I-35 in Waco.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagney is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagney. Tell them Paul sent you by.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak and Craig Smoak.
All right, 365 Sports continues. One of the games, and it's probably without question, maybe the game of the year, Saturday morning in Ann Arbor, Ohio State and Michigan. So much involved in this rivalry, so much on the line. And also, Dan Hope joins us, 11 Warriors, who covers Ohio State. Dan, thank you with Craig and Paul. Paul's out, Craig Smoak and David Smoak. this game over the years has been the game for a long, long time. Have you ever seen such build-up as this one because of the extracurricular stuff going on as well?
No, I think this really is about as anticipated as this game has been in a long time. And it might be the most anticipated this game is ever going to be, because you think about next year when the playoff is going to expand to 12 teams. I don't know if we're ever going to see another regular season college football game quite like this, where everything is on the line. You know, the way the playoff is shaping up this year, and you've got all 5 conferences still in it at this point. This really does feel like a true college football playoff quarterfinal game between Ohio State and Michigan, Big Ten title on the line. And then, like you said, you've got everything else that's built up to it with this scandal of Michigan that's dominated college football headlines for the past month, which I think has just made the hatred between these two programs grow even stronger. And so, yeah, it's certainly about as much buildup as I can ever remember for this game.
Dan, there's obviously a lot of noise out there surrounding Michigan, a lot of chatter. I mean, unsurprisingly, I think Ohio State fans obviously are loving every minute and think Michigan's the worst, thing in the world. But sorting through all that noise, what's kind of been the perception of this whole thing and the Big Ten and, just sort of the way this has unfolded here over the last couple of weeks from a Buckeyes perspective?
Well, yeah, you're right. Ohio State fans have certainly enjoyed this story. I mean, you can just look at the traffic numbers on our website for anything that's been written about it over the past month, and it's been very popular among Ohio State fans. But, I think the thing, that's interesting when you get back to this game is I feel like, this game on Saturday, not that it necessarily should be, but I think that it is ultimately in some ways going to shape the perception of that story going forward. Because I think if Ohio State wins this game on Saturday, it's going to be easy for Ohio State fans to say, well, Michigan just won the last 2 years because they were cheating. But if Michigan wins on Saturday, then it's like, well, what's your excuse now, Ohio State? So, I think I don't necessarily think it should, because every game is different. But I do think that, depending on how this game plays out this week, could shape some of the perception for how that story is perceived going forward.
What is it like in Columbus after losing to Michigan? Because for the longest time, it was like that in Ann Arbor for what seemed like a decade.
Yeah, it's kind of a dark time in Columbus when Ohio State loses to Michigan. It really is for Ohio State fans. It's everything to them, and so to lose not only once but twice in a row. And it's something that, Ohio State fans just hadn't experienced for a long time. I mean, there was so much dominance for 2 decades, Jim Tressel era, Urban Meyer era, that, for Michigan to win that game in 2 years in a row and do so in dominant fashion is something that, especially younger Ohio State fans haven't really experienced. And so it's a new thing for Ohio State fans. And I think certainly leading up to this week's game, it just increases the hunger for the Buckeyes to get a win.
Dan, where does your mind immediately go when it comes to this matchup and the importance level of the various storylines here? Where's like the immediacy as far as what you think is the most important factors in this game?
Well, I mean, certainly, it's the game that you expect to be a defensive battle with the way both these defenses have played all year long. Michigan's ranked number 1 in the country in points allowed per game. Ohio State's ranked number 2 in points allowed per game. And so, I expect it to be a lower scoring game. I don't expect either offense to have a huge day here. But when I think of it from Ohio State's perspective, I think, the really important thing I look at for Ohio State is stopping the run, because this is a Michigan team that wants to run the ball a lot. You saw it in the Penn State game a couple weeks ago. Michigan ran the ball 32 straight times to end that game. And so I think if Ohio State can successfully stop the run, or at least limit the run game, and force Michigan to make plays through the air, I think that could be Ohio State's biggest recipes for success. Now, obviously, they tried that last year. It didn't work, but I think Ohio State's secondary is a lot better this year than it was a year ago. And so I think Ohio State can be more successful this year with, playing to stop the run and being able to trust its defensive backs to win those one-on-one matchups on the back end. Going to be the toughest test of the year for sure for Ohio State's defense. And, you think back to last year, the numbers on defense were pretty good going into this game, and then everything fell apart against Michigan and Georgia. But I do think the defensive improvement for Ohio State is very real this year, and I think it gives you confidence that this defense can get the job done on Saturday.
Sell me and us and our audience, Craig too, that the loser of this game, based on how a scenario happens where the loser of this game can still be in the college football playoff.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly a tough sell right now because when you look at the landscape right now, I mean, you've got two teams in the SEC still very much in it in Georgia and Alabama. You've got two teams in the Pac-12 very much still in it in Washington and Oregon. You got two teams in the ACC still in it, Florida State and Louisville, and then you got Texas in it in the Big 12. And so they definitely need some help. Now, with that being said, I think that, if they get enough help to where you get into a debate of, one-loss teams that, didn't win their conference championship, I think particularly Ohio State would have a good case in that argument because they have that win over Notre Dame and non-conference play. They have the win over Penn State. And so I think, Ohio State, if enough happens to where they would be in a debate between teams in a losing situation here, I think they would definitely have a chance to get in again this year. But I think the likelihood of the loser of this game backdooring into the playoffs is definitely lower right now than it was a year ago.
Yeah, I think we talked to you back maybe towards the start of the season. There's still a little bit of talk at the very beginning about the quarterback situation. Obviously, Kyle McCord took over. The rest is history. They're in this spot. He's been very consistent. But how would you describe his play, having taken over the reins and just how that's gone throughout the year? What stood out to you most?
Yeah, I mean, he's not C.J. Stroud. He's not Justin Fields. He's not performing at that same kind of level, but he's done enough for Ohio State to win every game. He's, in games against Notre Dame and Penn State, when they needed him to make plays against tough defenses, he found a way to do so. And so, I think it's still, you think about how is his season going to be defined. I think a lot of it comes down to this game on Saturday. And I think there's still kind of an open book there in terms of if Kyle can go out on Saturday and play really well against Michigan, then I think Ohio State fans are going to think of him very favorably. I think if he doesn't play well and Michigan wins, then there's going to be a lot of people wanting to see a new quarterback next year. And so, I think overall, I think he's been good, but I think the standard at Ohio State over the past 5 years has been so great that he hasn't gotten to that level yet. And I think a win over Michigan is really what he needs for people to start talking about him that way.
I saw the note on your Twitter feed. Ohio State chose Kyle McCord over childhood Buckeyes fan J.J. McCarthy. How much does that play into this as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a storyline. J.J. McCarthy is someone who, he admitted this week that he grew up rooting for Ohio State. He wanted to be a Buckeye back in the 2021 recruiting class, and Ohio State chose Kyle McCord instead. And so, I think it's certainly something that, you look at this week. I mean, the way, J.J. McCarthy's played, he's already gotten a win over Michigan. And so I think this week does serve as a test of that choice for Ohio State that, if Kyle McCord was in fact the right guy, now's the time that he's got to show it.
Dan Hope with us, 11 Warriors on 365 Sports.
What did you think of Jim Harbaugh's comments or lack thereof when asked about Ryan Day? I guess that was yesterday or the day before, and just how would you describe the kind of the back and forth, the relationship or lack thereof between those two?
Well, yeah, Jim Harbaugh was asked Monday about if he respected Ryan Day, and he didn't answer. And then Ryan Day was asked Tuesday if he respected Jim Harbaugh, and he didn't answer. So I think those non-answers are pretty telling about what these two think of each other right now. I don't think that they're going to be spending time together hanging out in the off season. Neither one of them wants to outright say they don't like each other and give the other team bulletin board material, but they're certainly not the best of friends.
Dan, my question for you on recruiting. Ohio State pretty much gets whoever they want. There are, maybe 8 to 12 programs around the country that for the most part do. Do they rarely – are there times they just miss on somebody else? And if the case, how often do Ohio State and Michigan recruit against each other? Is it a lot more than maybe even we realize?
I mean, it's definitely picked up here over the past couple years because of the success that Michigan has had in this rivalry. I think, if you look back, 4 or 5 years ago, there weren't that many battles that Michigan was winning over Ohio State because Ohio State had been so dominant in that rivalry and Michigan wasn't really in the national championship picture. But now that Michigan has, won back-to-back Big Ten titles, they've made back-to-back college football playoffs, Michigan is now where they're competing with the top schools around the country for some of the top players in the country. And so those battles are certainly happening. It's not just with Michigan. I mean, Ohio State's also battling Georgia and Alabama. And, Ohio State has, taken a very national recruiting approach.
Sure.
And so, they're battling with a lot of different teams. But I think certainly the battles between Ohio State and Michigan have picked up. And, really one thing we've seen more and more of the past couple of years is Michigan trying to steal recruits from the state of Ohio, from Ohio State. And, there's been some of those battles that Michigan has won. Ohio State has won their fair share of them too. But to see Michigan come into the state of Ohio and pick up a couple of highly rated recruits that Ohio State was also interested in, certainly speaks to how Michigan has been able to get more of a foothold in recruiting thanks to their recent success.
Dan, thank you very much for your time. Happy Thanksgiving. We appreciate you.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks for having me, guys.
Dan Hope, 11 Warriors, covers Ohio State. There's a quote from Kyle McCord on his Twitter feed on 11 Warriors. When you're a little kid, you dream of moments like this, 2 undefeated teams in the biggest rivalry in sports. You can't draw it up any better than that. But I think at the same time, it's all about the preparation during the week. It's all about putting in the work and giving yourself an opportunity to succeed and go out and succeed. Kyle McCord on the game, Ohio State, Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, they've had a string of star quarterbacks, and he's not, necessarily in line with those guys, but he's been, steady and good. And we just got done hearing, that'll be, a legacy that's defined by games like the one coming up on Saturday, the game. And so, yeah, it's got all the makings of a classic, 2 very, very good defenses, 2 capable offenses with some explosion and some stars on that side of the football as well. But, I think that the defenses are going to be a lot of fun to watch, and just the atmosphere is always top-notch, and the implications are as great as they've ever been. You do wonder, does that lose a little sizzle moving forward in the new playoff era where this game doesn't have as much meaning behind it, that the winner and the loser both are pretty much still guaranteed to make the playoff? I guess we'll see when we get there and see how different that feels. It does kind of sound not as fun in my head that, but then again, I don't think I'll be complaining a month later when Michigan's having to play Clemson in, first-round playoff game and the winner goes to play Oklahoma. Like, I think I'll be just fine by then and won't, dislike it that much. But it is kind of odd to think of the fact that a game like this in a couple years or even next year would be a game where, the winner gets in probably, and the winner would definitely get in with these circumstances, and the loser would definitely get in as well, I believe. Obviously would have to see how other results would go around the country, but that gets into the thing we started talking about the beginning of the show and like the playoff and who has to do what and all that. Like, I didn't entertain it too much because I just feel like it's going to work itself out. Like, I really believe that.
And it always usually does.
It does. Yeah. And I know the thing to do, and especially in a role like this, is to sit there and go like, well, what if such and such? But like, I'm just more of a
let it play out.
I'm just more of a different thinker of like, let it play out, and like, let's see this weekend. And if this weekend everything kind of remains as is and you're heading into that final weekend, then I think, okay, you're one game away from there actually having to be a decision made. But there's so much chaos that occurred this weekend that you could spend hours this week. Well, what if Alabama does this and they could lose to Auburn this week for all we know? You know what I mean? And so that's part of the fun, but I do think that a lot will get settled on the field this weekend and make that conversation obviously a lot clearer, because it won't be could Ohio State sneak in? Like, they're either going to lose a close game and have an argument, or they might get blown out and that argument doesn't even exist any longer. Yep. So that's part of the fun. You're right. But, I am looking forward to seeing some clarity actually out there on the football field. And then if there's still chaos remaining, I imagine there will be some level of chaos, and, that'll be fun to talk about next week.
Interesting note. This is from on the 11 Warriors Twitter feed from Chase Brown, who covers the Ohio State and Michigan. Ohio State's 2021 recruiting class. First of all, you get these guys in your team. You're used to this. But Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, Travion Henderson, Denzel Burke. All these guys are like very much in the mix of first team All Big Ten or All American and big honors. And then JT Tuimolola, who's a defensive lineman. These were all a part of the same class who have not beaten Michigan. When you have those kind of rivalries and you play at a school like Michigan, Ohio State, Texas, OU, Auburn, Alabama, all those games, Army, Navy, and you don't beat the other in your time, whether it's 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, it's miserable for you the rest of your life when it comes to the football part of your heart and soul. When we come back, Ricky Thompson, Baylor receiver back in the day, also sideline reporter and analyst. He'll be around the corner. My conversation with Baylor women's basketball coach Nikki Collin as the non-conference schedule continues after the win a week ago. Big-time win for Nikki and company against Utah at home. Hey, don't forget every weeknight at 10:30, 365 Sports Tonight on the local CW. Also, our holiday programming. We are here with you today. We will have a couple of days where we give everybody a chance to get out on the road or wherever you're going to enjoy your Thanksgiving. And then we'll be back on the air Saturday at 4:30 with our Baylor pregame against West Virginia at 4:30 here in the studio with Garrett Paul, and I'll be here as well. And finally, we're not done. Coming up, we'll have more. A couple of notes about UCF and Houston, that Space City rivalry. This is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, Ted Teague, GM, and also CEO. Man, they always have it going on with Black Friday sales coming up this weekend. It's been going on throughout the month of November. If you have never driven in a Ram truck and you are wanting a pickup truck, well, if you've driven one, you have your brand. That's what you go to, like Michigan, Ohio State, the brand of Ram. The new 2023 Rams, designed to be durable, functional, and stylish. I am amazed when Ted Teague has allowed me to drive some of their vehicles around, even if it's for a day, a half a day, or even for a weekend. How amazing, how smooth, because you think of a pickup truck and it's, it's rough and tumble and all that. Well, they are still that way. But it's like driving as luxurious of an SUV as you could possibly imagine with what's inside the cab. Ram, what it means when it comes to pickup trucks, premium options, luxurious leather trim seating, surround view cameras, exceptional legroom, storage, and what they now have found, the hidden areas in a pickup truck where you can store something on the inside and out. Award-winning product, Ram Truck, speaks for itself. Alan Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared card to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations that will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, PettyClinicLowT.com.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
From the first workout to the last practice, sports is an incredible challenge. Hi, this is Dan Ingram with the First National Bank of Central Texas, and we're proud to support each athlete, every parent, and our educators. From families, small businesses, to the biggest industry, we're here to help. With remarkable products like instant issue debit cards free at all of our banking centers, we've got banking ideas that fuel big dreams. The First National Bank of Central Texas. Familiar faces making local decisions.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
All right, here we go. This 4 o'clock hour winding down. Ricky Thompson joins us in just a few minutes. Also, my conversation with Baylor women's basketball coach Nikki Collin. Greg Smoak, David Smoak, Garrett Ross here inside the studio. And again, we do hope you have a great holiday weekend. But we're not done. There's a lot of great games to get to. And also, we will be every night on the CW at 10:30 thanks to Emery Winter. Craig Smoak, all right, here we go. Big 12. 2 games on Friday. TCU, Oklahoma has Big 12 championship implications, as does the game that evening, Texas Tech at Texas. Let's start with the Frogs coming off the whipping of Baylor, Oklahoma. He's just kind of hanging around. They have the win against Texas. The loss to Kansas is what's going to get them if they don't get in. But that game early on Friday morning.
Yeah, interesting to see how healthy Dylan Gabriel is right after last week, but haven't, seen anything alarming as far as the reports go. And, being at home, I think Oklahoma with that shot to still, a sliver to be able to find their way into the Big 12 title game. I think they'll be ready to go, but, TCU does have a little bit of confidence that was lacking prior to last week thanks to just simply getting a win, no matter how you get it, but to get it against your rival and to do it in emphatic fashion, I think has to be very encouraging for Sonny Dykes and company because it has been a tough year after, the magical run of a season ago to have your quarterback and Josh Hoover throw for 400-plus yards. That was, I think, a great thing as well. So I feel like TCU will be coming in playing with confidence and also playing with the fact that they have to win this game to get to a bowl game. They have to beat Oklahoma. This is their last shot to get win number 6. So I think on both sides of the equation, you've got a couple of teams that ought to be fired up and foaming at the mouth to get a win. I go Oklahoma here, especially at home. I just think based on what I've seen from both teams, like TCU last week, part of that was hey, great, but it's also look at who they're playing. Everybody has looked good against Baylor at this point. So, Oklahoma's had their struggles here and there, but I still think they're the better team.
No, I do. And again, there's still a reason. Anytime you play, there's a reason to go play. But Oklahoma still has that hope that they could get a rematch with perhaps Texas in the Big 12 championship game. And then the next game, talk about some drama. You had Brett Yormark in Lubbock at that luncheon and talking about how make Joey take care of Texas. UT fans reacted very sensitive to that. And, again, you have the commissioners saying to an open, hey, we want you to go down and take care of another team on their way out, both Texas and Oklahoma playing on Friday. And for Oklahoma, it could be their last Big 12 football game. For Texas Tech, it won't be. For TCU, it won't be. And for Texas, barring something catastrophic, it could be their last Big 12 game, too, which is interesting. They play on the same game. Joey McGuire, The Big 12 starts to run through Lubbock. A lot of things here. Texas has just been really good from start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, at some point that quote may come true. They're setting themselves up to make that the case in the new Big 12, just with the way the recruiting's going and being able to build a couple of solid years together. They are in a bowl game as it stands right now, so that win against UCF and coming from behind to win that and then hold UCF off was a really big deal, because if they were coming into this game with 5 wins, they probably aren't going to the postseason. I think Texas is the better team. I think they're clearly the better team. It's in Austin. I don't worry too much about an upset here. I think it would take like kind of a bad day from Texas to see the upset. But Texas Tech's going to play hard. You know, it's going to be really interesting to see Taj Brooks against that Texas defense, knowing how stingy they are against the run. And then for Texas Tech, if Taj Brooks can't get going, or any of their other, running options, how is Baron Morton able to navigate things through the air? And if you can take advantage of Texas, where can you take advantage of them? So, I think this is going to be a great little back and forth. And then, Texas Tech is a stingy little defense themselves. So I think they'll be disruptive, and they're going to play really hard and physical. And if anything, it's going to go to the final whistle. I don't know if the game will remain that close, but Texas Tech is going to play until that final whistle, knowing how big of an opportunity this is. But I think Texas, too, knows, it's all there for the taking in our hands.
Yep.
We just have to go handle our business.
It would
do
be
it
miserable
at home,
if they didn't.
Book a Big 12 title shot. And so, I think this is big for both teams, but I would imagine that Texas is going to be pretty locked in.
UT can book it and then wait to see what Oklahoma State does the next day, or Kansas State, also depending on what happened earlier in the day with Oklahoma.
Well, plus they play a playoff hope
Absolutely.
still. So
Yep.
they've got a lot of reasons to be jacked up for this. But, I know Joey and company will be geared up as well, so that'll be a lot of fun.
All right, we can blow through these pretty quickly. Ricky Thompson right around the corner. Houston and UCF, don't worry about that tweet, Garrett, because I still don't quite understand. They're going to end up with some sort of trophy about Space City. They're very proud because of NASA. Houston, we have a problem. Dana Holgerson brought that up. He goes, they don't say Orlando we have a problem. We know Cape Canaveral's a, 30, 40-minute drive from Orlando. I drive by that when I fly in to go see my brothers. Fly into Orlando, skirt that area. Craig, UCF coming off that win a couple of weeks ago when they hammered Oklahoma State, and now Houston trying to see maybe – dependent if, I don't know, but it seems like Dana Holgerson's back for another year.
Yeah, I think, that's probably likely. But, this is going to be an interesting game for both teams. I know there's still – it's kind of like the West Virginia situation where Dana Holgerson could probably, have won a couple more games and people are still going to not want him to be back just because that's, there's segments of the fan base that just don't like him. But, they've had a couple of good moments. Obviously, with a little bit of this trash talk, it makes it interesting. They can't make a bowl game, so all they can do is close out with a win. So there's the motivation. The little space rivalry as well, I think, is a fun little element to this. But for UCF, you're at home. It's a familiar opponent. You got the space thing, it's kind of bubbling there. But you need a win to go to a bowl game. And to go to a bowl game after the way the season kind of got off the rails would be a really big deal for them. They're big favorites in this game. Houston's been very up or down week to week, and so I'm curious to see how they perform here on the road against the Knights. But UCF's got a lot to play for here, and I think that they're the favorite for good reason in this game.
They've won 7 of 10 against Houston in the history. Most of course, a lot of that in the American Conference. Then BYU, been a disappointing year for the Cougars. Oklahoma State, up and down. We spoke with Sam Mays earlier about this. Chance for Oklahoma State is right at their doorstep to be playing in the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah, and I do think, going back to UCF Houston real quick, I do think if they sort of formalize that space race and name it and all that, I think that pairs with Farmageddon really well. And then if TCU and Baylor could figure out, the rivalry is the thing that makes the most sense, I think that's some good marketing and kind of rivalries that aren't going to be nationally popular, but that are unique and cool and have their own little fit that fits those rivalries. But, as for BYU, Oklahoma State, look, BYU's got a lot of work to do. They've taken some lumps this year after a nice start, but reality sort of set in there, and they've got a lot to address in the offseason. But for Oklahoma State, it's all right there in front of you. Just go win this game. You're playing for a Big 12 title, and you've got an opportunity to, get that win that you feel like you should have gotten a couple years ago when you couldn't get the ball into the end zone on the final play.
Absolutely.
So, but for BYU, as much as they've struggled, they win this game. They not only get a big top 20 win and they disrupt the Big 12, but they also get into a bowl game, which, given where they've been the last few weeks, that would be a really big deal for Kalani Sitake and company. But they're big underdogs, so it'll be easier said than done, especially on the road.
TCU, BYU, and also UCF have a chance to get to that 6th win. We've discussed West Virginia with Jed Drenning. We're about to discuss Baylor with Ricky Thompson. We'll go through that game in the next segment. KU and Cincinnati. Cincinnati, of course, 3-8. Kansas with a nice run, 7-4 with Lance Leipold and the Jayhawks. Nice momentum from last year into this year. Some high hopes. They're still pretty good. They've been a fun story again.
Yeah, it's been fun, but have now taken a couple losses. You know, had an opportunity to play for the Big 12 title and then quickly lost their last couple of games that negated that. You know, what's the situation at quarterback? We've seen Cole Ballard here, getting the reins because of injuries after Jason Bean had to take over for Jalen Daniels. They did get the news that Jalen Daniels is coming back. That's huge, but it would be even bigger to go 8-4. That would be really big for KU. On the road makes it a little bit more interesting. Cincinnati obviously has struggled mightily here in their opening Big 12 debut year, but they finally got their first win in Big 12 play, and to get the second one would be a really big deal. They're only slight underdogs being at home here, so that's interesting to see that, especially I guess at the Cole Ballard situation. Maybe that's playing into it. I don't know, but just 6-point dogs against what you think is a pretty superior Kansas team. But that's a game that doesn't have a lot of sizzle, but it is big for KU to try to get their 8th win in the regular season. It'd be big for Cincinnati to knock off a team like KU.
Speaking of Armageddon, Iowa State, Kansas State, that's the night game. Saturday night, Kansas State still has, by then they'll know, a chance to win whether or not they get to play in the Big 12 championship game. Iowa State gave Texas, struggled first half, eventually UT with too many weapons. I think this could be a hell of a game, but I think Kansas State still, despite the loss a couple of weeks ago, I think they're 3 weeks ago, I think they're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I mean, their odds for getting the Big 12 title game is kind of slim, but there is an opportunity if things fall the right way. So you are, excited about that fact that there's at least a possibility heading into this weekend, but obviously things will be cleared up by the time they take the field as the final game here. So they'll know what's what by the time this kicks off. But regardless, it is the Farmageddon rivalry. Let's not blow it up to make it too. It's not like the Big 12 canceled Oklahoma, Texas, or Bedlam, but it is a big rivalry for those schools.
They played 106 times.
Yeah, no, yeah. I'm just saying it's not the end of the world, but I know for those fan bases. It's not the end of the world nationally or even regionally, Big 12-wise, but I know for those schools it is a big deal, and I do think it was probably a mistake to not have that continue on when you have that much of a history. So knowing what they know now, that it's not going to be an every-year thing, I think that adds a little element of spice here, but I think just in general, these two teams don't like each other. You've got that history, and you've got a couple of teams that are pretty good, and obviously a win for either one of them would be a big deal. So, yeah, I think that they'll both be geared up and ready to go and beat the snot out of each other here. So, yeah, that ought to be a lot of fun as the Big 12 nightcap. And yeah, I would say Kansas State's the better team. I think that they would, obviously be the favorites to win this game.
They can still get to 10 wins. They beat Iowa State, whether they play in the Big 12 championship game or not. They have 9 wins if they win this weekend, and then the bowl game down the road, too. Now, when we come back, Baylor, is this Dave Aranda's last game? That is at least a part of the conversation. Can they somehow pull one out after they've been in this funk now, really from start to finish of this year? Sideline analyst Ricky Thompson, next on 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on for great customer service and for great pricing and some great options when it comes to trying to get into a new vehicle or just getting your car serviced. And they have been your go-to for buying or getting your car fixed up here in Central Texas for a very long time now. And the name on the dealership's not just a name. It's a great man behind that dealership in Richard Carr. So let he and his people over there at the dealership help you like they've helped me on so many different occasions over the last few years. And right now, they've got a lot of great deals over on the lot, especially if you're looking to get into a new vehicle. There's a lot of construction going on, but they want to make it worth your while getting on over there. So how about the power and strength and stunning interior interior of a GMC Sierra. For those interested in a truck that has it all, we'll look no further than the GMC Sierra. And right now, take advantage of the holiday savings on cars and trucks happening now over at Richard Carr, where qualified buyers get 0.9% financing and no payments until 2024 on new 2023 GMC Sierras in stock, plus military and first responders can save an additional $500, and restrictions do apply, so you can see dealer for details, but many ways to contact them: in person, over the phone, on the website. Check out the great deals like the GMC Sierra right now over at Richard Carr. And if you're not looking to necessarily buy new, but you are looking to get into a new vehicle for yourself, well, they've got a lot of great vehicles on the lot because of the fact that they trade for the best. So they have a lot full of quality pre-owned cars and trucks in stock, around 100 used cars and trucks to choose from, all inspected with a 172-point inspection and the Richard Carr seal of approval. Plus, the financing goal is 100% credit approval, as they say yes when others say no. So check out the dealership that's been in business for 24 years in Central Texas and has built a reputation as the people you can count on for your automotive needs. Run by proud Central Texans. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Former Baylor receiver and sideline analyst Ricky Thompson joins us. Craig Smoak, David Smoak, on the eve of Thanksgiving here on 365 Sports. Ricky, thank you for your time today. We appreciate it. Can you see them pulling anything like all of a sudden Baylor changes the last game after what we've seen all year?
Smokey, it would be somewhat surprising. I think it's just
a difficult point in the season for these guys, particularly when they know it's last game. And it's just a mixture of a lot of things. You got the holiday period. I think the attendance is not going to be very good.
Yeah.
Students are gone, probably won't come back. And I will say, historically, the Baylor students have been great about coming back to ball games over Thanksgiving weekend. Most occasions, those late games have meant something, and this one doesn't have a lot of meaning other than you've got a group of seniors that are going to play their last game for Baylor, and they were part of the Big 12 championship 2 years ago. So for those guys, I hate the way this is going down toward the end, but this is going to be a tough game that points to playing without your quarterback as well. So I think they'll play hard. I just think it's an uphill battle at this point.
Ricky, what was that like when Blake Shapen was hurt last week, and just kind of what did you sense from the sidelines? And I guess just what are your thoughts on Sawyer Robertson having not played after getting that little dabble of experience earlier on in the year? What can you really reasonably expect with him, and what do you expect on Saturday?
Yeah, going back to Blake, Craig, to your point, I think everybody was really disappointed in that, and to the effect of course, at that point in the game, it was done. But if that happens earlier in the game, I think it's really a huge disappointment because Blake has played so well under what I think haven't been very good circumstances with his protection and the shots he takes and the sacks. And I really thought while that play was legal, that was really an unnecessary hit by the TCU guy. Walk on, took his shot. Wasn't a penalty, but that's probably one you can pass on. The other side of it is maybe Blake's not in the game with a minute to go in the game over. Put Sawyer in there and see what happens. Going to Sawyer, I think this might be a little different for him in that when he stepped in last time, remember, guys, he got hurt pretty early too. And I think that ankle was a lot worse than we really thought. He made a couple of really good runs early, and then we kept wondering, why won't he take off with the ball? Why won't he go? Why is he not stepping into his throws? And as it all comes back, the kid was hurt and was playing hurt. And I think that was really not a fair assessment of him when he couldn't step with true form to deliver the football. Plus, he couldn't take off and run, and you're just watching how he hobbles. So hopefully you see a healthy Sawyer Robertson. I think it's good that he gets to play. I mean, we're not playing for a bowl game, and I think that's fine. Rest Blake, let him get well, and see what Sawyer can do. As far as that goes, I think the timing's just fine. Let him play.
Ricky, we know, all of us know that there is discussion about what happens after the game Saturday night. Dave Aranda, first year 2-7, then, of course, the best year in Baylor football history. And you as a former player can appreciate what was done. And then, of course, last year, the way that thing ended, and this year it never started, really, other than the nice comeback against UCF. What are your thoughts about if you stay the course, NIL is changing, young players, and then the opposite is if you stay the course and nothing changes, you really almost lose another year, 2 or 3?
That's a possibility, and that's a decision that has to be made. That one will go to Mack Rhodes, and just have trust that he'll do what's right long-term for Baylor. I don't know exactly what that is. I do know that there have been adjustments made in the NIL, which had to happen. Mm-hmm. We're suddenly competitive in that regard, and I think if you compare it to the remaining Big 12 schools, throw out A&M and Texas, because I think they're anomalies, a little bit like Ohio State, some of the other schools, Georgia, where you have unlimited alumni resources to do whatever you want to do. But back that off, I think we put our NIL in a position now where we can compete with any of these Big 12 schools. So that part's done. Coaching decisions, those are some that are going to have to be made. I don't know what they'll be. I think you'll see some changes. I don't know how dramatic that'll be, but I think for a lot of reasons, just going into next year, that this off season, and I think, Smokey, I think it's got to be pretty quickly if there's going to be changes, whether it's coordinators or the top spot. You got to do it very quickly, because the first thing you have to do is recruit your own players and keep those guys and make sure they're not going anywhere. Then you've got to keep the class that you had, and then you've got to start working on new kids. So there's not a lot of time remaining. A lot of teams have already pulled the trigger. So we'll see where that goes. But I think those decisions will be made quickly, and then we'll go forward, whether it's with Dave or new coordinator or
all of the above.
Whole bunch.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, true.
Ricky, on a scale of 1 to 10 or whatever, you get the gist. How disappointed? I know there's a lot of focus on the offense, but how disappointed have you been in the defense and just their performance overall this season?
Well, I think everybody is, and I mean, it's not a secret that they've not performed. And I thought Saturday was another case where we really were in a position to make some stops early and did. Remember, guys, they scored 42, but we stopped them twice inside the 10, once with a fumble and once with a fourth down hole. You kick those two on top of it, and it's really out of hand. Now, last score, we gave it to them. We go for a 4th and 4 on the, 30-yard line? I mean, that's not a fair assessment of a defense. But I guess the part that would bother me more than – if you've got a man-to-man coverage and the guy beats your man coverage, then you just get beat.
Yeah.
That's a one-on-one battle. The guy wins. But when you have a tight end go untouched 81 yards, that's not the same. And that's a mistake somewhere, either by a player or a call or a scheme. But then you get hit again on the same play for 3rd and 25, and you go for a 28-yard touchdown. Those are the ones that I think have to be fixed in some form or fashion, because, again, I can take somebody getting beat man-to-man, but just running wide open, uncovered, that shouldn't happen. And that's a match of either an offense knowing what we're going to do defensively or somebody blowing a coverage, or a combination of both.
Ricky, you're a former player, a letterman, and then also JJ joins us almost on all Mondays. And both of you guys have been incredibly transparent in how you feel. You're a part of the radio broadcast. How much has this year as a former player hurt you in a way? It doesn't keep you up at night. You have your own business, Alliance Bank, and all the things you do with your life. But how much has this season just like been a kick in the gut as a former player?
Well, I'm going to go back on you one time. It does keep me up at night.
Okay.
when I come in the evenings after a game, I mean, my poor wife, Carol, we got married 10 days before I started my NFL career, and she knew after which games that I'd talk and after which games I wouldn't. And she knew when we were going to dinner after game, and when just to tell our guests, just don't ask, because we're not going to dinner. I can tell you in advance. So it does keep me up. And I love Baylor. I love the school, and I love to be successful. And gosh, I hate to lose. I am a poor loser at whatever it may be. I hate it. So it has kept me up. And I think it's disappointing in the fact that we had eight home games. We were kind of set in that regard, scheduling to our advantage, and frankly got a chance to go 1-7 at home, and at best 2-6. And I don't think that's what any of us expected. And the part that's really difficult when you love Baylor like I do, the excitement of 2 years ago, Smoky, was beyond anything you could really imagine. Just a little unexpected. I think we knew we were going to be pretty good. We had a lot of good guys out there. But then some of the wins that year where you make the plays we didn't make this year to win tight games, and then you win the championship game the way you want it, that's the ultimate high in football to me, a season like that, and then you get the Sugar Bowl. And I think the tough part is that you follow that with two really not very good years, which you think maybe you have the great year, now let's build on it. And I think we've had a hard time doing that.
Ricky, as I think you mentioned the NFL a moment ago, and that reminded me, I wanted to ask you about Drake Dabney. He's a true senior, so in theory he could come back, but has set the new mark for single-season yards by a tight end in program history. Last week, breaking Ken Hodges' record from back in 1964. He's got a bunch of touchdowns, which tight ends, hard to come by. Just what do you think of his prospects as a pro, and just where have you seen his game evolve? I know he touched on during his media session how he knows he's a threat in the passing game, but he's tried to develop as a blocker as well. Gave Grimes a lot of credit. Just what have you seen from him, and what do you think that could lead to as far as his prospects moving forward?
I think he's got a real shot at the NFL. I think that's the kind of guy that they look for. They may want to put some weight on him, get him a little bit heavier, but the guy runs so well for a big guy. And, he had a couple of games in there where I thought he dropped some balls that he didn't need to drop. One was on a first series against Iowa State, remember, that may have gone to the house and could have really changed that game on the very first series, and just absolutely dropped it. But then on the reverse Saturday, the deep ball that he caught, I think not many people realize how tough of a catch that was. He went up with his hands running full speed and didn't break stride. How often do you see a guy on a deep ball just break stride, slow down because he can't judge the ball? He judged that thing perfectly. Had a guy in his face, hands up, not sure that he didn't have his hands on him. Not only does he make the catch, but he runs another, 25 yards after the catch? The main thing to me would have been just make sure you get the ball. But he not only got the ball, but had a great run. So that's what NFL guys look for. Man, I wish we had him back. But
yeah.
I'm guessing he'll be gone, and I think he'll be a draft pick. And I think the dude's really got a chance at a nice NFL career.
Ricky, thank you. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you Saturday. We appreciate your time as always.
Happy Thanksgiving, guys. Have a good one.
Ricky Thompson with us on Wednesdays. Next week will be interesting because of whatever happens on Saturday evening with Saturday night, Baylor and West Virginia. I'm sure no matter what happens, as is the case after any game, which is the last game of a team that's not going to have a bowl game, and sometimes even with a team that's going to go bowling or play for a conference championship, the AD football coach may sit down the very next morning, look at the opportunities and or the future. I would think that's the protocol. After the game with West Virginia, Sunday morning, Mack Rhodes will sit down with Dave Aranda. They'll discuss where they are, what they're going to do, who's going to be a part of what they're going to do, and there could be a change as early as Sunday, or there could be, we're staying with you, and we're going to make these other changes, but you have to be the one that decides what we're going to do along with the new and revamped NIL and move forward. And I know that would be tough for the fan base because of how just lethargic this season has been.
Yeah, I mean, some guys are getting fired. I think that's pretty obvious.
Could be across the board. It could be one coordinator or two or other position coaches, and it could be the head coach, and then that means everybody is free game.
Something's happening. That is for sure. Just to what extent, like you said, is the mystery. Could be at the very top. Could be, both of the coordinators for all we know. I do think it's a little bit alarming of just the Matthew Powledge kind of learning on the job and the fact that that's as much of a disconnect as it is. That is concerning. And so you wonder how that's handled because, like Aranda said, he can't be on the job working on the defense like he's the coordinator still.
Yep.
But he keeps a watchful eye. The Grimes thing, I do think Grimes is a really good coach. I think Grimes is probably a future head coach somewhere. And 2 years ago, I don't know how much he interviewed or had interest, but it would have been a nice time to go and jump in if that opportunity would have arisen. I still think that's out there for him, but I just think when your bread and butter is the wide zone, it's running the football, it's, the tight ends. The tight end things worked out well with Drake Dabney, but the inability to run the football consistently, it just derails the whole operation. And so I just don't know how you can run that back. I can see where you can say, Powledge is learning and Aranda will be, or whatever. But on the offensive side, it's are you going to guarantee a brand new O-line that can block all year long? Are you going to guarantee running backs that fit the scheme rather than a Richard Reese just being there and a non-factor, taking up a scholarship, even though he's a Big 12 nuke or whatever it was, freshman of the year before.
All-American, freshman All-American.
Yeah, I just feel like, on offense, that's not the biggest issue. The defense is probably the bigger issue, especially given you have a defensive-minded head coach. But I just don't trust that you can make enough moves in the offseason to get this offense personnel-wise back to where it needs to be as effective as it was 2 years ago when Abram Smith was just running through folks behind a battering ram of an O-line. That takes time. That takes the right guys, and I just don't think you can do that in an offseason.
But his first year came in, and they flipped to the wide zone, made Abram Smith a linebacker into a running back, but they had a lot of the pieces on the offensive line. Mateos, of course, a part of that too. There are thoughts about what's happened to the offensive line. It's going to be an interesting weekend. The game Saturday night, Craig is right. It would be hard if you say we're going to stay status quo. You go status quo, you might not have single digits of renewals of season tickets. You cannot make the decision based on that. You have to make the decision, if you're Mack Rhodes, based on what's best for the football program, and that could be mass wholesale changes, or that could be coordinators, as you mentioned, one or both, and or position coaches on top of that.
Yeah, and I just think, too, with the offense being the way that it is, when it's working, it's fun to watch your team run over people and just run through them.
Like Sam Mays was talking about,
and, and there's nothing that they can do about it, and that was great during that Sugar Bowl run. But that was 2 years ago at this point, and they have not come close to replicating that since midway point of last year, if they even got close to it at that point. But at least they were still winning games back then. So I just think if you're like, yeah, we're same offense as last year, people are just going to be, the eye rolls will be, enormous. And to your point, probably not a whole lot of people buying into what they're going to be rolling back. So, yeah, how do you approach that if you do bring certain people back? How do you sell that? How do you go about fixing that? And it's across the board. It's not just offense or defense. It's the whole thing needs to look over. So, yeah, some very big decisions upcoming, and we'll know in short order what those are going to be.
We will do that, and we'll keep up with it. And, of course, what we do with Sikkim365.com in the premium section has a lot to do with that as well. Baylor is 3-8, most likely 3-9. They ended with 4 straight losses last year to Iowa State, Houston, Kansas State, TCU. I'm sorry. They what was I thought?
That was this year.
Yeah, that was this year. I thought I had the schedule. They ended up, of course, last year at the end after wins in Lubbock and in Norman, and then all hell broke loose and everything fell apart. And of course, the disastrous bowl game. They lost their last 4 to Kansas State, TCU, Texas, all ranked teams, and then Air Force in what is a memory you'd like to forget, even if you weren't playing in that game, but they're at the game in Fort Worth in the miserable conditions.
Yeah, and so what is that? It's so
You're
that was the last
3 and 13.
3 and 13. So there's that alone. But then you take into account how many of those 13 are like bad losses.
Kansas State, Air Force.
From the standpoint of either blowouts or just embarrassing, losing to a team you feel like you shouldn't lose to. Just embarrassing losses, bad losses. Yeah, Air Force was an awful loss because
Texas State,
the weather was awful. It was a bowl game at TCU Stadium.
Right.
Texas State, you start the season of all this offseason of optimism and changes, and right out of the gates you lose at home convincingly to Texas State. Blown out by Texas. Blown out by K-State. Blown out by Texas Tech.
Iowa State.
Blown out by Iowa State.
Yep. Blown out by K-State.
So it's
blown out by TCU.
Yeah, so you're not even being competitive. So you're just going to tweak a coordinator and all that?
No. It's going to be, there will be something. It's just a matter of how much. Right. There'll be shrapnel, using that term as far as coaching staff, but just how much it might be. You always wonder what would have happened had they held on to the lead against Utah. Would that have just been lipstick on a pig, or would that have given them something, although Texas in a couple of weeks most likely would overwhelm them. Thank you, Garrett Ross. Appreciate Emery Winter, Levi Caraway, also Jack McKenzie. Craig, happy Thanksgiving. Everybody enjoy what you have coming up this weekend. We'll be back on with our pregame show on Saturday at 4:30 right here inside this big, beautiful studio. I want to give one more note. Ted Teague sent this to me, if you don't mind, Garrett. Black Friday sales event at Allen Samuels. 4 brand new 2023 Dodge Hornets, the newest addition to the Dodge family. $1,500 rebates, no payments for 90 days. 2023 Dodge Durango, $4,250 in rebates, another $750 if you finance with Chrysler Capital, no payments for 90 days, and 10% below MSRP on the new 2023 All Grand Cherokees, the Gladiators, except for the Gladiator Sport, which is 15% below MSRP. Deals are going on. 10% below MSRP, not on just the Ram 1500 Lone Stars, but also the heavy-duty trucks as well. 2,500, 3,500, and 10% off MSRP, no payments for 90 days. We appreciate you. Enjoy Thanksgiving. A lot of things we'll know by the time we talk with you again on Saturday when it comes to the pregame show. We'll know who's going to be in the Big 12 championship game. Or maybe not, because K-State could still be a part of that discussion on Saturday evening. Again, Garrett, thanks for your time. Coming up next, we're not done. This is the 5 o'clock hour, and Baylor women's basketball, Nikki Collins joined me one-on-one, and she's next, and then Paul's top 5.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses. But when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs. Knowing you, that's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Cars priced right, both day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is brought to you by Edward Jones and financial advisor Cam Heathcott. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak and Craig Smoak.
Baylor women's basketball coach Nikki Collins with me, David Smoak on 365 Sports. So how did your team, in your opinion, you beat Harvard Sunday, how did they handle the big win against Utah, and did they remain focused and locked in?
I think they did. I think it was going to be a tough game either way. I don't think people understand how good Harvard is. I think it was such a trap game for us, and it would have been that way regardless of win or losing to Utah. I think, if our tails were between our legs after losing to Utah, it would have been an easy game to lose because of how tough Harvard is and how physical they play and their 5-out style and system, and along with Harmony Turner, who can go get points, or winning, keeping them focused on, okay, we had a good game, but that doesn't mean we're elite yet. We have to prove that we're truly elite. And so, I think we had moments, which you're going to have early in the season anyway, regardless of whether you've played a top 10 team or not played a top 10 team. So just trying to keep them focused on building blocks, getting better day in and day out. Okay, our ball screen coverage wasn't good enough. How do we improve that? What areas do we need to shore up? And so, I certainly don't think we were overconfident. I think we made them feel like Harvard was a really good team because we truly believed as a staff that they were.
What do you enjoy the most, or what are you better at? And don't have to rank them in order, but game planning, coaching, practice on the floor, fundamentals, et cetera, that type of part. X's and O's for a game or during a game, or recruiting?
Oh, wow. This is good question. I mean, I think I thrive in-game X's and O's, planning. How do we beat a team? How do we maximize our strengths? What's going to work in this game? I think I'm pretty good at reading adjustments in-game. But I enjoy the teaching. I enjoy being on the court. I enjoy having players, kind of grow and develop and figure it out. And recruiting, I like people. I mean, it doesn't mean I love to recruit all the time, but I certainly understand that it's the lifeblood of a program, and I'm only as good as the players I recruit. And so, it has to be a primary focus. And I do enjoy meeting people and, but if I had to say, like, what do I love the most? It's probably the chess match, the in-game chess match. Like, what are they doing? How do we counteract that? What are they doing with our ball screens? What can we tweak to be good?
I have this question. So in a football game, a guy, let's say it's 3rd and 7. They know if they get the first down, it's first down. They got the play call, all that sheet. In basketball, can you think a play ahead, or do you have to be in the moment?
It's a little of both. We certainly go in. To me, I'm going to go in with, even if our playbook is, let's just say 30 plays, I'm going to say, okay, these are the 8 that I feel like are really going to be effective tonight. And maybe it's keeping the ball in the middle third of the floor. Maybe it's, they're not as good in 2-man action, or they're not as good in 3-man action. And so I think you have to have a plan going in. We may script the first 2 or 3 plays, but then we have to see, okay, what are they doing differently maybe against us that they didn't do? Harvard had pressed a ton leading up to our game. They didn't press one possession. And so, you have that where as the game's going along, you have to figure out what's working, who needs the ball, where do they need the ball, what are the matchups. Like, we're in a unique situation this year with kind of having these hybrid players that we're not always sure how the opponents are going to match up, and so there are times when, our mismatch will be with Asia, our mismatch will be with Bella, our mismatch will be with Dre, and it's about recognizing where those are at and how we can kind of move them around to get them in the best position to be successful.
You mentioned the hybrids, and you have, at least, and knock on wood, it's a game that can have attrition, but you have so much depth, so many parts. Is it almost like you have been hamstrung at times, not with that the first couple of years? Is it like sometimes you're like, wow, we've got a lot of different weapons in different ways?
Absolutely, I feel that way. It's you look at the end of the game, or even watching the Utah game back, and, Danae only played 6 minutes, but they were really, really good minutes. And I'm thinking to myself, I need to get her more minutes because her toughness showed. I thought if we're going to switch screens, she did such a good job of switching screens. And the reasons we brought her here, they really came out, when you saw her compete at that level. Yaya was in foul trouble against Harvard, so only had 8 minutes. You can see how electric she can be in short bursts. And so, it's kind of the pieces moving around and keeping the players. You look at a lot of box scores, and most teams play 7, maybe 8 players, and so when you're trying to play 8, 9, 10, it's utilizing them the right way. The good part is it helps keep them accountable. You're going to show up and you can compete every day, because if you don't, there's somebody that's ready to take those minutes, which is a good problem as a coach. But at times, you do want to give people minutes, but you're careful not to keep, the Sarah Andrews from getting into a flow.
Talking to Nikki Collin, Baylor women's basketball coach, with us on 365 Sports. With you now having I mentioned this last time we spoke, your daughter and your son now here with you, has that allowed you to have in-person sounding board, just someone else to talk to more often? I know you had communication, your family on the road, your husband, et cetera, but is it different having them in person to lean on a little bit more?
The best thing about having them around is just seeing them, being able, I know, it was pretty magical for that Reese cheered the Utah game. And, she was tearing up after the game. It's fun when your kids can articulate how proud they are of you, because as parents, we constantly take so much pride in our kids and who they are and what they do and their successes. And so I think it's just been great for me to have the in-person support, to be able to put my arms around them, to see them, to smile, to laugh. My daughter and I are doing a puzzle tonight. It's just something the family does when we get together for the holidays. We're always playing games and doing puzzles. And, but I'm still, most nights they're college students. They're doing their thing. And so I still come home and kind of do the work that I've always done. But, I get to touch them about 5 days a week. My son's super invested, comes to practice, does his homework, and may come to practice for an hour. But just is around a lot. And so they're just having a good time being around the program right now.
Did the Utah win validate what you're doing?
I'm not sure I understand. I hope so. I've always believed that I know what I'm doing as a basketball coach, and I think, we have good players, and our staff has done a good job recruiting really good players. And I think these are the type of games that truly, I've said it before, but that I came to play in, that I came to play for. And so, you just enjoy, if you're a competitor, you enjoy those moments because it's an opportunity for your players to showcase, what they're capable of. And at the same time, when there's all this hype surrounding certain teams, you want to prove that you count, and that you can be in those conversations. So I mean, look, I don't ever expect not to be the best. It's just, I was born with those expectations. And so, we want to prove that that's who we are and who we can be, and everybody's going to skin a cat differently. How Iowa plays is different than how Virginia Tech plays, which is how different from how Stanford plays. But I think there's a lot of ways to successfully, play basketball. And so I think we're just kind of showing our brand. And, I think we're just tapping the surface. I'm frustrated with our offense, and we're shooting around 50% and scoring in the mid-80s every game. And I'm thinking, like, man, we made these 15 mistakes. We're going to start scoring 100 points, and we're not, we're scoring 80 points against good teams. So I think we have a lot of room to grow still and get better. And I think on the defensive side, we have a ton of room to grow. So I think this team still has a long ways to go. But I think the Utah game was hopefully a big building block for our fans, for hopefully our student crowd, for people to see that what our brand of basketball can really be fun to watch. because I do think how we play is fun to watch.
You have this stretch now with McNeese, Alcorn State, SMU, without getting too far ahead, then Oregon around the corner in early December. Do you use non-conference games, or does it depend on the opponent to kind of play or tweak a little bit towards what you're going to need to do either against another quality non-conference opponent or when the Big 12 battering ram begins? Is that something that kind of just comes naturally? And do you have so many players that getting a rotation or cutting it to a certain number will be difficult?
I think the rotation is going to potentially depend on the opponent, the style. I think, when teams have a traditional big, it allows us to play Letty and Kyla really effectively at the 5. I think it's tough when a Harvard plays 5 out and everything they do is screening and we're switching and, they would have been caught in mismatches all night. I prefer to put players in position to be successful. And so I think these games are about, continuing to grow in terms, like, how are we going to get better day to day? There's a lot of areas that no matter who we play, we have to get better in. At the same time, we face, a hard hedging ball screen defense against Harvard. We face an ice ball screen man-to-man team, in Utah. We're about to face a tandem 2-3 team that's probably going to play 2-3 zone for the whole game. So you really are like, okay, this is when you want to execute and prove that you're going to be really good against zone, and you're not going to just rely on swinging it around the perimeter and making threes, but playing inside out, working it into the high post, using your short corners, and really developing your zone attack, because we will face teams that are going to play zone. Kansas State plays some zone in our league. And so Iowa State always plays some zone. So when you look at your non-conference opponents, they're going to present something different every night. We're watching McNeese right now. They may not be an offensive juggernaut, but they play 4 out, 1 in. They throw it into the post, and they run splits where they're going to screen guard to guard on the perimeter and make reads. Well, we haven't faced that, but Texas Tech does that. So it's good for us to start to prepare for, defending splits on the perimeter when the ball goes into the post, and really being good in our communication and talking and not getting blindsided by screens. And so I do think the non-conference, it's like you see a little bit of everything. And you obviously see different levels of talent, different size, and expectations in games are different, how deep you can go. But I do think we've got to figure that core group out that can shift depending on opponent. If we need a lineup that can really shoot it because they're really congesting the paint, then we've got to play a lineup that can shoot the ball from the perimeter. Because I don't think you can dare us to shoot if that's how you want to play.
You have in a conference with Oklahoma, Kansas State, which they had the great win recently against Iowa, Texas unbeaten, and, of course, you beat number 4 Utah. And that doesn't mean others aren't. There's a lot of teams unbeaten. A lot of times in non-conference they are. But the Big 12's had some pretty salty non-conference wins. How much have you paid attention to that?
I watch basketball every night. I'm a nerd. So I watch I watched the Kansas State game. Not shocked. They beat Iowa a year ago without Ayoka. Mm-hmm. And now they know, Kansas State knows who they are. And I think some teams this time of year are developing identity. Kansas State knows we're going to play 4 around Lee, and we're going to throw it into her, and you're going to have to decide whether you're going to single her up or double, and then she's going to read kick out, and I'm going to throw one more. And, and so they're really good at what they do, and they slowed the pace. They kept length on Caitlin Clark, and so huge win for them. Not surprised by it. I think everyone knew they had a chance to be really, really good if Lee got back and was healthy. I think TCU, while, their schedule hasn't been as tough, I think what they're getting out of Sedona Prince is really impressive. And Madison Connor, 2 transfers from the Pac, has been good. Texas probably hasn't been tested yet, but they'll get UConn sooner than later and have a chance to evaluate where they're at. And certainly their style, they have everyone returning. So I think our league is really, really good. I think people are surprised that OU is good, but I just think they're very system driven, and they're going to recruit players that that can shoot it and are going to be aggressive and run up and down the court. And so if they make enough shots, I think they can beat anybody on any given night, which they proved against Ole Miss. And so, you know, I think it's a league that has a lot of different styles, but a lot of talented coaches, a lot of talented players. And, you know, people aren't talking about the Big 12 as much as they're talking about the Pac-12 because of how many teams they've got in the top 5 and top 10. But I think we have a lot of really, really good teams in this league.
I got one final question. And by the way, happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the holidays with the family. When you are on a timeout and you have that board with your Sharpie or whatever it is, right, eraser board, do you have pretty handwriting during that time? Is it chicken scratch or does it look like a doctor's prescription?
Oh, very, very pretty. Oh. Yeah, no, those are, you know, it's funny. I had, when Chloe worked for me last year, she said I was the first coach she ever worked for whose hand didn't shake at all.
Wow.
In those moments, it's like I always feel like that's like my sandbox when I just get to play. And it's so often an opportunity to like take something like I write a lot of stuff leading up to games, actions. You know, even before the Utah game, I spent the last hour before I came out just really, really dialed into this could be a really close game. Like, what do I want to run if we're down 3 and there's 8 seconds to go? Like, what are we going to run if we're down 3 and there's 2 seconds to go? You know, and so much of that is not just like, hey, I'm pulling it out of thin air. But it's almost like one of the things I've been really lucky with and considered blessed with is I have a fairly photographic memory.
Okay.
And so when I've drawn something up before, when I've seen it before, if I see it, a great play on a Twitter feed that they're posting with Jokic and, you know, an NBA play, whatever, it's still like I can pull that pretty much instantly and say, okay, this would work in this situation. And so to me, my biggest issue sometimes on the board is making sure I know which 5 are in the game, especially if it's a 30-second timeout and everyone's standing as opposed to sitting in front of me, and making sure I get initials right, you know? And at this level, you got to make sure the board is turned in the correct direction. Because if you don't turn the board so that it looks exactly like the court directly in front of the team, they'll get turned around. You know, and so it's little things like that that you didn't have to worry about in the pros that you got to make sure, you know, that's a JW for Jada Walker, and it's
right.
You know, so I use initials for everything. I don't know how anyone uses those magnet boards and puts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 and moves them around because we really don't have 3s, 4s, and 5s in a lot of settings. You know, so everything is very initial driven. So that's about, sometimes I'll get Sarah Andrews and she'll be at the point and then she'll be over on the wing as well.
Nikki Collin, Baylor women's basketball coach on 365 Sports.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 best rivalry weekend matchups. And look, if you didn't have a name, if your rivalry doesn't have a name, I didn't include it. So I'm sorry to North Carolina State. 2 8-3 teams, very evenly matched. But, you know, I'm trying to keep this fun here, Jack. So,
yeah.
I mean,
we can try and dub it the Dogwood Derby, but.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll try. I mean, there's, you know,
it's tough.
like, you know, the UNC and Duke is Tobacco Road, right? So, like, they have that. UNC and NC State, they just call it Carolina State game, which is fine. That's them. That's for their fans. For the purposes of this, you know, I needed some joie de vivre.
No, I get you.
Yeah. And by the way, we are, in case you haven't figured this out, I haven't been on the show until right now, so this segment is pre-recorded.
Yeah,
yeah, there we go. See, there's Jack. He's also not here today.
Hopefully.
But number 5, the Apple Cup. Look, I know that Wazoo has fallen on hard times lately, but this one will be a little bit personal. And I like rivalry week games that get kind of exciting and interesting are ones where one team has nothing to lose at all and potentially a bowl game to game. There's 2 games on this list exactly like that and can ruin the rival's whole season. Well, that's what Wazoo could do if they beat Washington this week. I don't think that's going to happen, but it is in Pullman, and so it could get interesting because it will be lit up. And I also put this on the list, even though it's an 11-0 team versus a 5-6 team, because they had the dadgone decency to put their petty differences behind them, and for the sake of their fans, keep it going.
Yeah, which is beautiful.
Yes, that to me, credit to both these universities for figuring it out and doing the right thing.
It's definitely the right thing, and I'm very happy about that. I do wonder if this year, because it doesn't strike me as a very ugly or mean rivalry. Like we want to beat y'all bad, but not like a hate-filled rivalry.
Oh, it's not like the Holy War.
But this might be the most hate-filled version of it.
Yeah,
like since a while and for a while.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I do. Like, I know you announced it this week, but for Washington's sake, like for Wazoo's sake, you maybe like your fans to think that this could be the last time. So they're really like, knives out. But they're still going to be really lit up for this. Number 4, this one doesn't have a rivalry name. I'm just calling it The Last Ride. I named it The Last Ride. It's a one-off because, look, this is the last time. I know that Tech probably has a better shot at getting Texas on the schedule than TCU or Baylor or Houston would. Like, that's very true. But this is not going to happen for a long time. Because, look, Texas, to their credit, schedules out of conference really well. And even though they're going to the SEC and a lot of the teams they would schedule out of conference now become not that, they're going to avoid that for a little while. They're just going to. So this one could be very interesting. I don't think that Tech is winning on the road in Austin. That is not a thing that I think that they can do. But, again, this has got the Your Mark sauce on it. Texas has played kind of fast and loose the last couple weeks.
Your Mark sauce sounds like it should be a good sauce.
Yeah. But it has got Your Mark sauce is full of energy.
Is it the first ever caffeinated sauce?
It might be. Absolutely. Do you like barbecue sauce but always feel tired after you eat it? Well, no longer. You've got Your Mark sauce. You'll have energy.
Created in Brooklyn, New York.
Energy, ideas.
Anyway, yeah, should be a fun one.
Comes with a free assistant to write things down. Hey, got this. What if we play games Eastern Europe? Boom, write it down. Don't know if it's going to happen, but let's flesh that out. That's what he'd do. Number 3, the Sunshine Showdown. I particularly am not crazy about this rivalry name. I'm crazy about this game. It means a tremendous amount to me, and it has the same kind of weight on it that Washington and Wazoo does, in that it's an 11-0 team playing a 5-6 team at their place, and Florida would make a bowl game if they won, but that's they're not going to care about that. They're going to care that they ruined FSU's season. That's what they're going to care about. Now, FSU could lose to Florida and beat Louisville and win the ACC, and they might lose both those games and still wind up in a New Year's Six bowl because you got to, pick teams for that. But if they're not in the playoff because of this game, then that's all Florida needs. They don't need a big, gigantic Thanksgiving dinner that would be like it used to be, where this game affected the national title picture for both sides, for the winner completely. This could just be a nice meatball sub where it's like, this is delicious, and I'm glad it happened, and I'm happy that the people in Tallahassee are sad, and it's because of us. Now, Florida is also playing with their backup quarterback, so that's probably going to be a little harder than it would if Graham Mertz, and I can't believe I'm saying this, was in the game, but he's out. He shattered his collarbone the other night. It was he got lit up, and he was playing really well against Mizzou when he did. But he's out. Max Brown is in. So instead of Jordan Travis versus Graham Mertz, you get Tate Rodemaker versus Max Brown. The matchup you didn't know you always wanted. So, but yeah. And you can, for the people that don't follow either team, I can fill up a whole one sheet of paper on what I know about both these guys.
Yeah, and from a neutral's perspective, I mean, sitting here knowing what is on the line for Florida State and how much Florida would love to take all of that from them, I think you could tune in and easily, unless Florida State is finding a way to blow them out, I think you can easily get interested in that game.
Yeah, I think you could. Number 2, the Civil War, Oregon and Oregon State. Oregon State will make this very interesting. They're a really tough team, but I think this might be Oregon's toughest game of the year. Honestly, it might be. Oregon State just lost, and they're out of the playoff picture officially right now. So they I guess they were a couple weeks ago, but like even still, like that's kind of over for them. They're out of the conference title picture. So now it's just go get that dub. And this one, we don't know if they're going to play it again. We don't know if Oregon has the same sort of benevolence towards their in-state rival that Washington does. So this one, as far as the fans know, this is the last Civil War they're going to see for a little bit. So that one, that could make it interesting there. I still think Oregon to me is the team, like, no matter which team you are that could wind up in the playoffs, if you told me, like, which team would be on their list if we definitely don't want to see this team, Oregon to me is on everyone's list. Mm-hmm. Whereas, like, Florida State might be on some teams' list, but not on others. Texas, whatever. Oregon is on every team's list. All the teams, the 9 teams that are still qualified for it, Oregon to be the one to me that would be top to bottom, all 9. And I guess Georgia, but, like, But other than that, like Oregon and Georgia to me would be across the board. Because I think some teams are like, yeah, I think we can get Ohio State and Michigan. I think we can get Washington. But I think all of them be like, I don't want to play Dan Lanning. Guy's kind of a psycho.
They're not the buzzsaw, but they're the hot team.
Yeah. I mean, like that's the other thing is it's just like that guy's kind of a psycho. I don't want to be in the alley with him going like, all right, make a move.
Like I think I can beat him. I think I can. There's someone out there who I know I can't beat, but I don't want to play the guy where I'm like, I think I can. I want to play the guy where like, Here's what's interesting to me about Dan Lanning is that the way he coaches with such, I don't want to say reckless abandon, but that he is confident in the decisions he makes and he takes big risks. That would make a lot of coaches go, oh, do I have to like match that energy? And if it's not your style, then it comes across like, oh, well, you can't, that's something that I think he can do really well and he will do for years. And number 1, how could it be anything else? This is the only game that will for sure affect the playoff. For sure. Because all the other teams, and playoff teams are mentioned in every single one of these games, but if it goes chalk in those other 4 games, then nothing changes from this week to next week. But in this one, for sure it'll happen. I'm picking Michigan. Wouldn't surprise me to see Ohio State, sneak up and surprise them. How much emotional baggage can Michigan carry? I don't know. But this one is the one, no doubt about it. Michigan and Ohio State will affect the playoff, and it will have a ridiculous TV number because we're all going to be watching it. Yep. Totally agree.
Yeah. It's going to be wild. So that is the top 5. I hope you all have a happy, wonderful Thanksgiving. Enjoy it. Spend time with your families or walk around the Gaylord Texan like I'm going to do. And I might ride the ice slide this year, Jack. Do you think I should wait in line and do that?
No.
No?
I think the line's just going to annoy you more than anything.
I'm not bad with lines. If there's something that's fun on the other end of the line.
Yeah, but I see this as like
there's a lot of children
waiting in line to get into a parade or something, and that just I know you hate that. That's like
look, if there's something fun at the end of a line, I'll theme parks, all there for it.
If you think it's gonna be fun,
barbecue. I've waited in line for barbecue all across this country. So if there's something fun, I'll do it. All right, that's gonna do it for us, or at least do it for me here on this episode of 365 Sports. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.